up in Oregon, I believe, or was it Utah, who was in a custody battle for these children. All criminal charges against them have been lifted. Thursday's surrender is the first at the ranch in more than a month. The four were driven by convoy to the local FBI headquarters. The Freeman fugitives, many of whom are wanted for fraud and threatening the life of a federal judge, have been locked now in a 10-week standoff with the FBI. Might be a sign the increasing pressure is working. That would be one view of it, but the 17 who are left include the hardcore leaders who we don't think are going to leave. The news at the top of the hour suggested the FBI may be getting ready to make their move. So we'll see. There is remaining, though, one child inside. The balanced budget amendment to the Constitution failed as forecast. Did it by 3 votes. Now Bob Dole will be seen to have it as a campaign issue. He knew it was going to fail, wanted to get the vote before he left the Senate. He did. It failed. Now I guess it will be considered to be a campaign issue. The President of the United States, offering more candy to the people, has cut closing costs on homes $200. Well, if you bought a home, you know that it is exactly what Bob Dole called it, chump change. Chump change. And that really is what it is, but it is the latest offering from the president, who knows what you want to hear. So there you are. You can rack that one up, too. There is big news with regard to Bob Dole's anti-abortion stance. He wants a change in the platform. Now, the Republican platform basically says no abortion, no exception. He would like that changed to include the exceptions for life of the mother, rape, incest, and so forth. Said that he wants diversity in the party. Does not now, he did, support a human life amendment that would echo what's in the platform. He does not now. This may bring on a Buchanan fight. We'll have to see. As you know, Mr. Buchanan is very staunch on the issue, and I wonder how you feel about it. I know many of you are very staunch, strict on the issue of abortion as well. How do you react to Bob Dole's wanting to soften this, to make the tent a little bigger, bring in more? AIDS news. There's a lot of AIDS news tonight. I want to talk to you about this a little bit. It confuses my understanding of AIDS. The first bit of news is simply treatment. If you are splattered with blood, get a needle stick, something like that. They want you to take AZT right away, along with some other sort of little soup mixture of drugs, to prevent the possibility of contamination and infection of HIV. The really bad news about HIV and AIDS is the Science magazine reports of new research in Boston. Now, this really is something. Oral sex, previously, was thought to be safe sex. Not. Now they say oral sex, even without open sores, is a way to transmit AIDS. Now here's where I get confused. If they were talking about open sores, one way or the other, genital area, mouth area, both, then it would be easy to understand how they have come to this conclusion. And they came to it, by the way, using the monkey version of AIDS. And they exposed 7 7 lab monkeys in the manner just suggested, and 6 of them, 6 out of 7, came down with AIDS. Now, here's the part I don't get, and maybe somebody in the medical community can help me out here. If without open sores oral sex can transmit, and apparently fairly easily, AIDS, several questions come from that. Number one, how is this discernibly different than kissing? I don't understand that. They went out of their way to say kissing, less casual contact, they called it. Kissing is okay. I don't understand how this can be. If the concentration of the AIDS virus is sufficient with oral genital contact to transmit, then why not simple oral contact? I don't understand the difference. And the second big question to ask about this revelation is what previously was thought to be true now is not true, but my God, this is 1996, not 1987. Got a lot of years under our belt of looking into AIDS, and this would seem a rather late date to me to be modifying what you now know to be true about how AIDS is transmitted. A little late, wouldn't you say? The fire in Alaska continues. A little relief with a little less wind, but it's not over yet, not by a long shot. 150 homes destroyed, 42,000 Alaskan acres burned. It is a fire about 50 miles north of Anchorage. 1,500 firefighters on the job. And even though the wind has slackened, it could pick up again at any time. Very dangerous fire. Got a lot of faxes during the day about the fire. Here's one, Art. I'm still alive, fighting smoke, fire, and exhaustion. I'm right in the middle of it. I live in Houston. I'm still fighting to save my home. It hasn't burned down as of this moment. Today is going to be pivotal. This is a war zone. Don't know how much longer I can hold out, or will be here. This must be what it's like to be surrounded by the BATF, it says. And this, greetings from the Great Land, Alaska. I live in Eagle River, about a dozen air miles behind the fire. It's been a whale of a week. Drove up there taking a load of supplies yesterday, got right up to the fire line. It was trying to cross the main road called the Parks Highway, and the Parks was closed for a while due to heavy smoke. It was, and still is, quite an air show. Watching the planes, helicopters, and smoke jumpers, some 2,000 plus trained volunteers, several hundred pros fighting this thing. 42,000 acres burned or burning as of 6 on Thursday. Saying if the winds don't change, it may be contained from here on, but no one's saying the worst is over. He says so far 200 homes have been destroyed and over 300 structures burned to the ground. But at least one hero emerges today in the form of Martin Boozer, Iditarod dog mushing champ. He threw his dog sleds and equipment in the lake and ferried his 80 dogs away from his home as fire approached a boatload at a time to the other side of the lake. Then he came back across to fight fire to save his home and land. This story is really unbelievable. Apparently, he saw the flames coming at him, shooting 50 feet above the treetops. Martin knew his buckets and garden hoses weren't going to do the job, went for help, ran to the nearest fire station. The doors were locked. No one was around to drive the fire truck he saw parked inside, no one around with a key. to the locked garage door either, so he got in, fired up the thing, and drove the damn fire truck himself right through the fire station's door. Then went fight fire on better terms. He did, too. With his dog team now safe, he doused the burning trees, now right up to his property line, battled this monster of a thing alone and head on. And you know what? He won the damn battle. His home is fine this evening. His dogs are back with him. Martin was interviewed by a local news crew, but by this afternoon, he could barely speak, hoarse and nearly closed. They mentioned tire tracks were still visible on the fire station's garage door. Right on, Martin, right on. Ron in Eagle River. That's an amazing, amazing story, isn't it? Absolutely amazing. Then this, Art, just came in. Unfortunately, tonight here in Charlotte, North Carolina, another black church was burned to the ground. This church had a congregation of less than 200 all-black members located in predominantly white southeastern Mecklenburg County. The structure that no longer exists dated back to the Civil War. Fire department says a strong suspicion of arson, and there was no harassment of the church by neighbors. There were no threats made to the church. I listened to you from just outside of Charlotte on WJR in Detroit. Frustrated John. So this torching of black churches would seem to be continuing. It better stop. I don't know what people are trying to do, but I can't think of anything more likely, particularly if a trend or a conspiracy is discerned to cause a violent revolution in this country, a race war, than the burning of black churches. Dear Art, I believe I know where the chupacabras came from. You may remember in history, entire continents were devastated by rats carried in ships. What if the aliens visiting this planet had rats on their ships when they came here? The chupas are probably just the equivalent of our rats carried here by their ships. That's an interesting theory. And this. Art, I thought you might think this is funny. At a local convenience store, some of us hang out late at night and drink coffee and talk about Art Bell. The cashier of the store asked me if I could print out the chupacabra picture for him to see. So naturally I did, in color. And I took it over to the store. After I left, some of the guys thought it would be funny to put lost dog on the top of the picture and offered a reward for its return. So they wrote on the picture that his name was Choopy and that he had been lost in the area and posted the picture. They did it near the cash register alongside of some other lost pet notices. Well, all that night, people would come in, look at the picture, and make faces and ask the usual questions. When he was lost, where he was lost, and so forth. And even an offer to keep an eye out for him. But then, the old fisherman came in. He obviously had had a few beers and was already in the store to buy a few more. He took one look at the picture and asked the cashier, "Is that your dog?" To which he responded, "Why, yes, and he's lost." Next, the fisherman asked, "When did you lose him?" The cashier said, "A couple of days ago, he ran away." The old man then looked really hard at the picture and said, "Did he run away from you, or did you run away from him?" It's true. That's a true story. I got such a kick out of that. So, all right. I've got one more item here for you concerning the Antichrist. That's right. The Antichrist. In Colombia, South America, There have been thousands and thousands of mothers rushing their children to get their children baptized by today. Have you looked at the date? It is 6/6/96, and they think it is the day of the Antichrist. Even women about to give birth described as absolutely terrorized. Interesting. Priests say, no, they're just panicking and not misreading the Bible, but, what if they're wrong? And by the way, there's a new worldwide web site called the www.antichrist.com. Now, I just heard about it before showtime, so I haven't had a chance to visit it yet. Maybe Keith will take a look, and if it's very interesting, maybe they'll put a jump in. Some of you ought to take a look. Let me know if we ought to put a jump in over to this site. Anyway, it's www.antichrist.com. I am www.artbell.com. That's my webpage. And in a moment, Coast to Coast AM.
This is the Nerd Network. That was Art Bell hosting Coast to Coast AM on this Somewhere in Time.
Because of the fact that I've been inundated with requests for a repeat on this, I'm going to repeat the 19-minute segment done with Major Dave last week, I believe so. So we'll do that at the top of the hour at midnight, and get your recorders ready or whatever, because we're not making this available because of its brevity on tape for you to order. So I'm going to replay it for you. It's a case of listening to what all of you are saying, so you will get that segment repeated. I'll issue a warning. It'll scare the hell out of you. And I'll try and give a little bit of... Major Danes is a very interesting man. He was on Nightline. He was involved in the U.S. government remote viewing project. And so with that and the fact that he's got a company called SciTech now, I spoke with him earlier today, and we will do a full-blown interview with him, no doubt sometime next week. But in the meantime, people were saying, well, even if you do it, well, it's not going to be the same thing. So this was a very frightening segment. We will repeat it for you in about 30 minutes. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning, Art. This is Glenn Kahn from Jamestown once again.
Well, hi, Glenn.
I don't know what's going on in this world today, Art. You were talking before the half hour there about burning of blank churches.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, we are all brothers and sisters under God's eyes. And Art, I'm going to ask for a big favor tonight. I need some healing from faith healers. If you would kindly pray for me, Glenn, in Jamestown, New York.
What is the problem?
Well, I don't know how to say this on an open radio show, but I have a swollen intestine, and I need God's help. I'm into faith healing myself.
Are you under the care of a medical doctor?
Oh, yes. Yes, I am.
Well, I don't know what faith healers can do at a distance, but maybe something.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, if they all get together and, pray at a certain time, I know that the blessing will come through.
All right, my friend, you've said it, and if they're out there, I'm sure they'll try, and so maybe your effort was worthwhile.
Thank you so much, Art.
Take care.
I appreciate your show.
Take care, sir. Jamestown, New York. And maybe there is a way to do that at a distance. Many of the greats claim to be able to do so. So maybe. Wildcard line, you're on the air. Good morning.
Oh, I wanted the Antichrist line.
Well, we'll call this the Antichrist line. Especially on this day. I mean,
voice, you know.
Oh, you want the voice?
Yeah.
You need the voice?
Yeah.
This is the Antichrist line.
All right. Hey, this is Rick Meister Gerhardt,
Yes.
conservative in California, expert in history and politics. You know, when we're talking about the Chupas, I think that as long as we're talking about blood here, we should focus on the blood that is on Bill Clinton's hands.
The blood on his hands. All right, what blood would that be?
Well, we can start with Waco. We've got 82 people dead there. And we can move to Somalia, where Bill Clinton had 44 American
Wait a
servicemen
minute,
killed.
Janet Reno said that the buck stopped there.
Yeah, well, I don't see her on death row yet.
All right. And then we moved to Somalia.
And Somalia, 44 dead. Haiti, 4 dead. And don't you know, they tried to tell us that 3 of those were suicide. Of course, that's what they said about Vince Foster, too, you know.
Well, do you want to count the circle of death around the president? You got to count that, too. How many bodies would you say that would be?
42.
42. So what are we?
I have a list of those if you want them, but I wasn't counting them.
That's all right. That's all right.
And then let's not forget, last, if not least, the 3 and counting from Bosnia. Unless you want to count the 5 service people that went down on Ron Brown's plane,
Well, you got to count those.
then that would be 8 dead as a result of.
All right. What is the grand total so far of bodies?
Well, let's see, 82, 44, 4.
Oh, you had
8.
this work done already.
So I mean, this guy he's got more blood on his hands than.
What about those who have been killed in automobile accidents during his years in office?
Well,
I think
wonder
they ought to be put on the list.
Maybe he's arranged some of them, you know, like the people who were the Arkansas medical examiners claim committed suicide, who shot themselves in the back of the head 2 times.
And how about the people who have died of AIDS and cancer that should not have on his watch had he just put enough money into research into those things?
Well,
I think those bodies, those numbers should be added immediately. Now we're talking tens, if not hundreds of thousands of bodies.
Now let's just chuck him, and you know Dole can beat him, especially because.
What do you think of Dole's change of position today? I'm curious about that.
I think it's to his advantage.
You do.
But you know what? Clinton is not going to take California, and without California, he cannot win. Now you know why he's
Well,
not going to take California.
now you're off into all right. Thank you for the call, but look, that is conjecture. You don't know whether Clinton's going to carry California or not. Now you're guessing. So at least I would guess 300, 400,000 bodies, all dead during the Clinton presidency. Wildcard line, you're on here. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
How you doing, Art?
I'm all right, sir.
This is Tim. I'm in Santa Maria at KSMA.
Yes, sir.
This sounds different than what I was listening to. What I was asking was, I was going to talk to you about, well, first, let's get the first one. Hey, I ordered a watch from you guys,
All right.
and I haven't got it yet.
Well, it'll be there any minute.
Oh, man, I can't wait. I ordered it for my wife.
All right. Well, we may get a second shipment of watches.
Okay.
So everybody hang loose for that news. But it's right now it's sold out. I'll let you know.
Okay, it's been about 3 weeks since I ordered it.
Right. That's about right. I'm beginning to get faxes and email from people who are beginning to get them now. So
Oh, good.
that's why I say any minute.
Okay, now what I was going to say was, I'm talking to you now, but I was listening to a different station, I guess, because you guys are talking about something different, but you're talking about the Antichrist?
No, I was talking about the Antichrist.
Okay. I was curious, I was listening to this because people are telling you that you're the Antichrist,
I know.
right?
I know, and I'm sick of it.
I know. And I was reading some scriptures, okay, and it says, who is the liar if it is not the one that denies that Jesus is the Christ? This is the Antichrist, the one that denies the Father and the Son. But I never heard you say that. So, I really appreciate your show.
Well, I thank you for the call, sir. Just remember, 6696. See you later.
See you later, Art.
Bye. Antichrist. Actually, it's very serious down in South America, for whatever that's worth. There are thousands, literally thousands of mothers that have been rushing their children to get baptized lest they get taken by the Antichrist, and they believe he's here today. Now, they may be all wrong. Indeed, they may be all wrong. Or maybe thousands of South American mothers know something we don't. That, too, is always possible. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Art.
That would be me.
I'm sorry. I had my radio up.
Yes.
A couple of things. First of all, I really like that story about the Chupacabra poster of the missing dog. That was great.
Yeah, I like the last line. Did he run away from you, or did you run away from him?
If it's a true story, I think I can just picture it in my head what the old picture might look like.
Oh, yeah, me too.
The second quick comment I wanted to make was, I've always thought it was real curious with these UFOs that have supposedly crashed, Roswell,
Yes.
Tunguska, Shag Harbor.
Tunguska, that was not a UFO. It was an unidentified flying meteorite or
Or a
asteroid.
comet fragment or something.
Yeah, that's right.
But Shag Harbor, I guess there these other ones, and I wonder, if these are truly extraterrestrial or advanced beings, and they fly all the way here, and just to crash, it just seems like the chances of more than one crash happening here is just really remote to me. I've always just thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, it is in a way when you consider they have to transport light years to get here.
If that's the way they do it, yeah.
Of course, maybe there's something about our atmosphere that is particularly harmful to navigate through.
Yeah, I don't know, smog maybe. Hey, one more question, if I could. Your show seems very well choreographed. Do you produce it all yourself, or do you have help? Or?
No, my dear wife, of course, helps with many aspects of life. Otherwise, I couldn't be here. But otherwise, in terms of production, when I'm on the air, no, it's just me.
That's cool. I forgot to say this is a Dave in Columbia, California, too.
Ah.
Sorry about that.
All right, Dave, thank you.
I'm not talking to you, Art.
Take care. Produced, I don't know about produced. I have help from an engineer in Oregon as well. Roger. And, I sit here alone and do what I do. That is fairly unusual on radio, but, the reason it is because it's the way I've always done it. It's just the way I've always done it. It's been open lines. I don't screen calls, so I don't need somebody answering my calls, right? Or why? And I'm used to working alone. I've been doing it for the better part of 12 years now. And I don't know. I very much like the late night hour, the fact nobody else is around and there are no other distractions, and so it's just kind of like the two of us. I think of it that way anyway. If I think of all people out there, it makes me nervous. I get nervous, so I don't think about that. And I think about talking to one person at a time. You can only do that anyway, right? So that's just sort of a more than decade-long habit now, and it's the way I prefer it. Actually prefer it. If somebody else was here, that too would make me nervous. I just don't think about old people. I think about one at a time, like here. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Hi, Art. It's Ed from Sunland again.
Yes.
California.
Yes.
Did you ever get the demon seed?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we didn't make it all the way through the mail. We're looking for the demon.
You know a bit about the, back in the 60s, you could buy seeds that were treated with cobalt-90.
Why would you want to do that?
Well, you could buy it from a scientific company in Barrington, New Jersey. I think you know who I'm talking about. And they offering for sale for kids who wanted to grow seeds for science projects, plant for science projects. Except that the tomato plants produce poisonous tomatoes, so that soon went off the market. But you could buy them, and there was a program going on. Didn't you have somebody contact you and said they knew all about this? And,
Yes, many people have done that. In fact, there is a great controversy about what I should do with the seed or seeds when I get them. Should I plant them, hope for the best, keep them, put them in a lead-lined box, send them off to a research facility, swallow them? What should I do?
By the way, how's Comet doing?
Comet is doing better all the time. Okay, better all the time. I mean, we're talking about a real wildcat here. And, notch by notch, day by day, he becomes a little more human-like.
Oh, okay.
Civilized. All right, you're welcome. Take care. Now, what should I do with the seed when it arrives? Suppose I just munch it up like a sunflower seed and eat it. Ooh, remember Alien? That was about the worst movie I ever saw at the time, since The Exorcist and the spinning head. Remember Alien when the thing burst out of the guy's belly? Well, obviously, eating the demon seed would run the risk of probably something like that. Being asleep in the middle of the night and suddenly seeing what appeared to be foul-smelling tree branches sprouting from my abdomen. Oh, boy. First time caller line, you're on the air. Hello.
Hi, this is Ted. I'm calling from Las Vegas.
How you doing, Ted? KVEG in Las Vegas.
You got it, buddy. And I really enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Okay, here's what happened. I was just at Scripps for a checkup the other day.
Right.
And I'm going to take a treadmill test. And I'm bored to death of sitting there while I pick up anything to read. I'm nervous. And I pick up a magazine called Aviation Week in Space Technology.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I'm sure you're aware of it.
I certainly am.
Okay, it's dated April 8, 1996. And on page 19, there's about 5 little articles. It's called Washington Outlook, and it's edited by Edward H. Phillips. And the first article, I think, is interesting. It says, "It wasn't us." And it goes like this. It says, "The FBI won't comment on its reported use of satellites as part of the surveillance of Unabomber suspect Theodore Kaczynski. But intelligence insiders claim the law enforcement agency wasn't aided by U.S. reconnaissance spacecraft. The use of U.S. foreign intelligence assets to spy on American citizens in the U.S. is illegal. And the intelligence community is limited in passing along even incidental information involving Americans outside the country." Now, in parentheses, it says, "I think it would be very interesting." It says, I think it would be very surprising if they were using satellite technology against a U.S. citizen in the U.S., said one intelligence source. But the first 6-7 words of this article is, "The FBI won't comment on its reported use of satellites."
Wow.
Okay, now that is a
Well,
little article. Right?
I'll say this. If they were able to use satellite surveillance technology on Kaczynski, so what? I think that's kind of a cool idea, really.
Well, what if they start using it on me and you?
Well, that's not cool. But I mean, we're not unibombing either. Thank you very much for the call. That is an interesting thing to note. And I wouldn't be surprised, but they would have done something like that, and I don't know that I object to it. You know, you had that little cabin out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, sure, they could take a look at that. You bet they could, the satellite. And I don't... in fact, there's kind of an irony to it when you think about it. He was the guy who didn't like high tech, right? Yeah. We're now in the waning seconds of 6/6/96. So you might want to be very sensitive to the next few seconds because, of course, this time zone he has already slip in. Now, many of you sensitives out there might want to try and set your receptors to decide if indeed today was the day of the Antichrist. The Antichrist appeared. What do your best sensors tell you? Are the hairs on the back of your neck standing straight up? Do you sense there was... repeat the segment by popular demand, overwhelming popular demand with Major Dames. Get your tape recorders ready. It's about to come up. And also a warning, what you're about to hear is very, very disturbing. If this kind of thing disturbs you, pathetic things, then now would be a time to turn off the radio. He is president of SciTech. They do remote viewing. It was the subject of Nightline. You'll recall the government, over many years now, has dumped a lot of money and time and effort into remote viewing. So it's not as crazy as it might seem. The facts from Major Dames says the jet stream is beginning to shift and riff. In several years, it will sporadically drop down near the deck. We are the deck here. Look forward to catastrophic weather changes and very dark skies within the next few years. 125 mile per hour microbursts, 300 mile per hour grazing winds, pick up lots of dust. And he says, I'll save the really grim environmental stuff for later. And I managed to get him on the line. I know it's very, very late. Major, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Let's see. Where to begin? This is a pretty serious facts, but you know it's backed up by another little news item I've got. People saying that suddenly that the weather we've been having is unusual, is not normal, is not cyclical, that something is going on, and that seems to be exactly what you're saying. What can you tell us?
Well, we have the company, SciTech, in addition to our training and our high-level contracts that we perform for various agencies and corporations, we have two in-house projects. One is an in-house study, an environmental study, and the other is a project that we call Project Starman. These are our own projects, initiative projects, if you will. The environmental study has been ongoing for about 2 years now. It'll probably take us another year to finalize our results, if we have another year. And basically, using technical remote viewing, the same methods we use to track terrorists for the government and to find hostages, and to cross-cue other intelligence systems during the Gulf War. We use these methods for peaceful purposes. SciTech civilianized the technology.
Right.
We began to download data indicating that human babies would be dying soon, many human babies. And so I entered into all the technical aspects of this. To make long story short here, it appears that we're dealing with a very immunosuppressed planet in technological shorthand. Babies will begin to die, I think, because of this. Many human babies. If you look at the surroundings now in terms of the biosphere, we will probably not have any frogs left on the planet.
I've seen stories about disappearing frogs.
Yeah. What's happening? Our work indicates, again, not finished studies, but our own study indicates that shortwave ultraviolet is killing frogs. Eggs are laid in shallow parts of the water, and the ionizing radiation from the UVB, the short ultraviolet rays, are killing, first mutating and now killing the eggs. So that is one aspect we're looking at. So we have dying human babies. Essentially, what it appears to be is allegorically like the planet is administering its own antibiotics. Antibiotics to take off or to take out something that is ailing its surface.
Us.
Yeah, and ultraviolet is a good way of accelerating that. So you'll see a lot of mutations, of course, in bacteria and viruses, particularly that bacteria. That's the information we have. Again, our report won't be finished for another year. But I thought I would tip you off, particularly about the problem with babies. It it appears that there's a bovine age that is developing. This will jump ship, and it's transmitted by dairymen who use the same needle to inject hormones in their dairy cows. Of course, they'll deny this until they can't any longer. But this bovine age will become a toxicological insult, that's the terminology in toxicology, to human babies whose immune systems are nascent, and they will die in relatively large numbers. So that's something to look forward to, but sometimes, the facts or that kind of a warning will serve to get a lot of mothers on putting their babies on mother's milk, human mother's milk, and perhaps milk substitutes. And we're looking at some other problems too, broken reactors, atomic reactors in former East Bloc countries. The maintenance is not going to go the way it used to be. So we're going to stress ourselves out radiation-wise too from both ends. Ionizing radiation from above, that's because of the ozone layer holes, and from below, ion problems.
What about the climate? Arguably the hurricane season and now the tornado season have been horrible. I mean, absolutely horrible.
Yeah, we're looking at before our study, we did not realize how delicately balanced the Earth's environment was. We assumed that it could reestablish homeostasis or equilibrium quite easily after drastic changes, but that was not true. I was amazed at how delicately balanced the planet was, the ecosphere, and the geophysics.
Right.
And it looks like the atmosphere is degrading very rapidly at timelines that we thought were out in the decades are now less than a decade. And that is resulting in the jet stream. Specifically, one of the things that we looked at was the jet stream over North America. And we're predicting that the jet stream will begin to, as I mentioned in the facts, twist and writhe and start to drop down and graze the surface of the Earth or come near it. Jet stream moves about 300 miles an hour, but it will produce chaotic among those probably microbursts and other things. Eventuating, it will pick up a lot of dust in the very dark skies. The vicissitudes of these weather changes will preclude growing crops the way we've ever grown them before. Either you grow them underground or in very solid buildings or in hermetically sealed units.
How close to this are we?
Again, my company's 1 year out from a final report, but I'd say we're looking at from 4 to 6 years between where the stuff really hits the fan. That means that you're going to have to start going indoors for long periods of time because of the high winds. And you'll have water and crop problems to boot.
And what is this all related? Now you talk about babies dying, immunological changes, our immune systems weakening or being weakened, and the climate changes. Is this all being produced or done by, is the same effect behind it somewhere?
I'm not certain. I'm not certain if the two are correlated. All I'm saying is that when we work the way that we work, we see these parallel tracks. The degradation of the atmosphere in conjunction with very rapid mutations and extremely serious epidemics and pandemics, mostly bacteriological.
Welcome to Art Bell Somewhere in Time. Tonight featuring Coast to Coast AM from July 16, 1996.
From the high desert in the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening, good morning across all these many time zones from the YMN Tahitian island chain all the way east over the flyover country to the Caribbean and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Good morning in St. Thomas, down to South America, north to the pole, worldwide. Yes, worldwide on the But Nightline tonight, we'll do a show about UFOs and life from elsewhere. I've done all my life with broadcasting. But I love broadcasting. Maybe it's in my blood. Radio is simply in my blood. Be a lot of blood talk about next hour, but it's in my blood. And if I'm not here, then I'm on ham radio, as most of you know by now. And I simply decided, I did do weekends, as you know, for a year. And I decided, well, that's not really giving me the break. Look, if you do a talk program, you have got to live that program. You virtually have to live the program. That means day and night. You're preparing for it if you're not doing it. Frankly, doing it is the easy part of it. And the talk show host makes it sound very easy. Well, it's not. It takes a lot of preparation. In the old days, I went out and got all the guests. I pre-interviewed all the guests, and did everything else. So 20 years of that is a lot, and I decided I wanted to spend a little time with my beautiful wife, who for 20 years, supported me, and so that's what I'm doing. And I'm only doing 2 Sundays a month. To be specific, the 3rd and 4th Sundays of the month. Now, one exception to that will occur this month. I will be doing the yearly prediction show, and on that score, I want to urge those of you who call me to make predictions during those couple of days that I regard this very seriously. We number the predictions for the year coming. We review the predictions made for the year past, and we do this in a very serious manner, and I expect you to treat it seriously. I want you to think very hard about the prediction you're making, not just something you're pulling out of your navel in order to call a talk show and get on the air, but I really thought out a prediction, whatever it may be. Now, I'll be doing those prediction shows. It seems to me, let me look, on the 30th and the 31st. And then they're numbered, sealed in the Bell Family Vault until the following year. So please think hard about it. Now, the Bell family is all fine. All 5 kitty cats are great. Sadly, though, Tower is gone. Tower, our bird, has expired. Tower expired because Tower lived in a house with 5 cats. And our cat, Yeti, made a jump that was unnatural. Now, our cats don't have front claws because, they're all inside cats all the time, and if you let them out, coyotes get them. So, to save the furniture and all for a million other reasons, we do all get emails, I know. They don't have claws in the front. Nevertheless, the Tower had learned to fly from the Tower's cage all the way around the room, circumnavigating the room perfectly at a high altitude, and then landing back in the cage as exercise. Well, incredible. Beyond all reason, Yeti, who had been lusting after Tower for, forever, since Tower came in the house, actually made a jump from the floor to at least 7 feet in the air, snatched Tower out of mid-flight, and then ran into the living room with Tower in the mouth. And we, of course, Ramona was chasing after Yeti, throwing things at him, unclamped his little jaws, and pulled Tower from what seemed like a sure death. Well, Tower lingered for about a day and then passed on from the rest in peace, Tower. He was the bird, and we did give him, or her, we didn't ever really know, 6 months of life that otherwise Tower would not have had, but it was very sad indeed. And Yeti, these are instinctual things in a cat. A cat wants a bird. That jump, nevertheless, was unbelievable. Mid-flight, really fast, too. So how he could have done that so accurately, we have no idea. Yeti, of course, is proud. He is so proud of himself. It was like
The other cats made way when he walked. He didn't just walk, he strutted. It's like, did you see what I just did? Did you see it? It was the ultimate. I am the king. And that's the way he acted, and still is to some degree acting. It's like, all other cats are now lesser. I did what all of you dreamed of doing and were unable to do, and I did it in midair. The football analogy would be the pass caught and the toes coming down just a quarter of an inch inside. You know, that kind of jump. I mean, it was incredible. So yet he's still strutting around like he owns the place. The other cats are showing respect. They actually move away when he comes by. All right, the webcam photo tonight is of my mom, myself and my mom. She was just here. Is back in North Carolina now. But there she is. That's my mom. Now in her 80s. It's better than I do. And I, of course, want to plug smeter.net. It's a secret way you can sort of listen into the shenanigans that we indulge on amateur ham radio. And we're going to be talking a little bit about ham radio tonight because I've got a couple things I want to say. So, anyway, that's a webcam shot tonight. My mom and smeter.net, the secret place to listen. www.smeter.net, not .com. I get so many emails. I couldn't find it. .com, not .com. It's www.smeter.net. And then you'll find the plant receiver and other receivers. Soon going to have one back in Tennessee. So you can listen to hams back east. Many emails about this, like this. Art, I heard rebroadcast, the Madman Markham rebroadcast, and his time machine. Does anybody know what happened because of him? What became of him? I have no idea. I've not heard from that man. And in addition, I have not heard from Dr. David Anderson. He was another time travel expert, a real expert in the field. I'll tell you something, it's been years now, and he's just gone. For God's sakes, Dr. Anderson, if you're out there somewhere in our time, get hold of me, buddy, and we'll get you on the air. Same with Madman Markham. Love to have a follow-up, as would the rest of the audience, but both of the men who are really involved in time travel are, for all intents and purposes, gone. Draw your own conclusions. A quick look at the usually, and not to be disappointing, depressing national news. Bush asserts U.S. is winning the Iraq War. That's the first story. President Bush asserted Sunday that the United States is winning the war in Iraq. He issued a plea to Americans divided by doubt. Do not give in to despair and do not give up on this fight for freedom. On the time address, he said all this and more. Second story in the national news is analysis. Bush dropped rosy Iraq scenario. No more rosy scenarios after watching his credibility and approval ratings crumble over the course of 2005. The president completed a rhetorical shift Sunday night by abandoning his everything's okay pitch to Americans and coming clean. He was wrong about the rationale for going to war in Iraq. He underestimated the dangers. The country has suffered terrible loss, and the bad news is not over. Even with his high-profile display of candor, a step-anxious Republican leaders had been demanding for weeks, Bush remained unyielding. Mexico's President Vicente Fox stepped up his attacks on the United States plan to build a fence along the southern border on Sunday, saying it was, quote, shameful for us. Shameful initiative for democracy. He said barriers between nations belonged to the last century and had been torn down by popular uprising, referring to the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. Build not a fence, keep our people out. The movie Kong made about $50 million in its debut, doing very well. Like monsters. And, of course, as I watched with a big smile on my face while our San Diego Chargers ruined an undefeated season for the Colts. Score 26-17. It was a glorious game to observe, absolutely glorious. All right, we'll get to the rest of the news, as Paul would say, in a moment. Show I did with Major Ed Dames. It was the last Sunday program that I did. And in that program, Ed came up with a brilliant idea to assassinate a top Al Qaeda leader by causing a bomb near him to go off. Well, it may not be the same exact target, or maybe it was. Who knows what Ed had us working on subconsciously, but I did flinch a little bit when I read the following story from CNN.com titled, Al-Qaeda number 3 dead, but how? Witnesses say missile strike. Pakistani officials dispute the claim. Pakistani officials have indeed confirmed the death of a top Al-Qaeda official. Looks like Abu Hamza Rabia. But witnesses and officials give very conflicting stories of how he died without elaborating. The Pakistani president said on Saturday he was 200% certain that Rabia, the operations chief of Al-Qaeda, the terrorist network, was indeed killed Wednesday. He was killed north of the border town of Marine Shah. Now, other Pakistani officials also confirmed the death, but said he died during an explosion at a home in the northern tribal area, northern tribal area of Pakistan near the Afghan border. A Pakistani information minister, Sheikh Ramad Ahmad, told CNN that Rabia apparently died while working with explosives. I'm not saying that's a hit in every form, but maybe. All right. The Earth's magnetic pole is drifting very quickly. Now, this is back in the news again. Heavily, Earth's magnetic pole, in fact, is drifting away from North America so quickly now that it might end up in Siberia in 50 years, according to scientists. The shift could mean that Alaska will lose its northern lights, auroras. It might even be more visible in areas of Siberia and Europe. The magnetic poles are different from geographic poles. The surface points marking the axis of the Earth's rotation. Magnetic poles are known to migrate and occasionally even swap places. This may be part of a normal oscillation, and eventually it may migrate right on back toward Canada, but it may not. It may flip completely, and we may be in the middle of something right now. In fact, let me stick my neck out. We really are in the middle of something big right now. It's happening. If you dare to step back and look at what's happening around the world and on our Earth right now, there is no question about it. One of the effects of the magnetic movement would be occurring on shortwave radio. Here's an article, interesting article. What effect will all this have on radio propagation? Well, it's clear the regions where best VHF auroral propagation will move as the magnetic North Pole drifts. I'm not clear on how this would affect the United Kingdom, obviously written in that area, but some people speculate the drift of the magnetic pole into Siberia would increase visible auroras in parts of Europe. If the Earth's magnetic field collapsed during a flipover, we might see increases in incoming cosmic rays and particles in the solar wind, because of course the magnetic field protects us against all of that, which would normally be deflected by the Earth's magnetic field. This may well affect the ionosphere. Could we see increased ionospheric propagation at, say, 50, even 70 megahertz? Who knows? But one thing's for certain, we live in interesting times. That's from Ham, N5 AKA, and he's sure right about that. We live in very interesting times. I work a band called 75 and 80 meters, 3.5 to 4 megahertz. Now, I must tell you that unprecedented things are occurring. At this point, when the sun goes down at night, those people that we've been able to reliably hear at 100, 200, 300, 400 miles away, they're gone. And propagation is gone. Now, is this the result of the shifting Earth magnetic field? Earth's magnetic, I don't know. But I can tell you we are in the middle of a big sea change in almost every aspect of what's going on in the world. I called it quickening. And I maintain that what I wrote down is now manifestly becoming the truth. Since I only have a couple of Sundays a month, I've got a lot for you. Siberia is melting. It's part of it. A peat bog in western Siberia, about the size of France and Germany, began melting 3 or 4 years ago and will spark an irreversible ecological landslide and unleash billions of tons of methane gases. This is potentially awful. The New Scientist, very honorable, reliable, New Scientist reported in August a Russian researcher visited the region, which is warmed faster than anywhere else on our planet. Temperatures increased 3 degrees Celsius in the past 40 years. Now, bear in mind, this ecological area is existing on a very, very tiny temperature gradient. In other words, a very few degrees rise, and you begin to get a very great deal of melting. And so already we've got a 3 degrees Celsius rise in the last 40 years alone. The findings followed a June report that said thousands of lakes in Siberia's east have dried up over 30 years. And if that's not enough, it may be the latest evidence of global warming. Polar bears are now drowning. Scientists, for the first time, have documented multiple deaths of polar bears off Alaska, where they likely drowned after swimming very long distances in the ocean amid the melting of the Arctic ice shelf. The bears, you see, spend most of their time hunting and raising their young on ice floes. But as it gets warmer, the ice floes are melting. In a quarter century of aerial surveys of the Alaskan coastline before 2004, researchers from the U.S. Mineral Management Service said they typically spot a lone polar bear, perhaps swimming in the ocean far from us once, perhaps every 2 years. Polar bear drownings were so rare that they've never been documented in the surveys previously. In September of 2004, when the polar ice cap had retreated a record 160 miles north of the northern coast of Alaska, researchers counted 10 polar bears swimming as far as 60 miles offshore. Polar bears can swim long distances, but have evolved to mainly swim between sheets of ice, if they're there. The researchers returned to the vicinity a few days after a fierce storm. They found 4 dead bears floating in the water. Extrapolation of survey data suggests that on the order of 40 bears may have been swimming, but many of those, of course, drowned as a result of rough seas caused by high winds. So, there you have it. All the while, our ocean currents, the ones that give Western Europe the relatively balmy weather, are beginning to stutter. I'm sure you've seen the headline, perhaps, on Drudge the last few days. And the fear is they may halt, as in the coming global superstorm, or the day after tomorrow, the movie that is based on that. And, of course, we wrote that as well some time ago, and it sadly would appear to be coming true. So what we have going on in front of us is a shift. The following is from Whitley Strieber's Unknown Country, but I assume it appeared elsewhere, certainly. Another asteroid headed our way. Yet another asteroid is heading our way, and it could hit us in 31 years. Will this one spell our doom, like an earlier one did for the dinosaurs? This one is called, I guess it's Apophis. Apophis, that looks right. After the ancient Egyptian spirit of evil and destruction, the asteroid is now aiming for Earth. In fact, it's being watched by astronomers all over the world, and it looks like it will hit a body of land. If it does, they may try to figure out how to deflect it or break it up into space. Most asteroids that hit the Earth land, of course, in the ocean, since oceans cover most of Earth. NASA says that an impact from Apophis, which could come in 2036, would release, this is bad, 100,000 times the energy of the nuclear bomb that was detonated over Hiroshima in World War II. No matter where it does hit, we would all be affected by the nuclear winter that would affect millions. We'd get effects certainly from dust particles being released into our atmosphere, and that probably would bring on nuclear winter. It's probably what killed off the dinosaurs and would do a job on us. Astronomers have tracked this one ever since it was discovered in June, but it has only started worrying them now because they say the odds of it hitting Earth in 2029 are becoming very alarming. We don't have much time to lose. It will take many years to design, test, and build the technology we need to deflect the asteroid. Meteor expert Monica Grady says an impact by this rock could cause mass extinction, and we're overdue for the big one. So that'll give the next generation something to worry about. There's a legacy of the tsunami out there, and it's not a good one. There's a dead sea, a dead zone, devoid of all life, has been discovered at the exact epicenter of last year's tsunami, 4 kilometers beneath the surface of the Indian Ocean. Scientists taking part in the Worldwide Marine Survey did an 11-hour dive at the site 5 months after the disaster. They were shocked to find nary a sign of life around the epicenter, which opened up an 1,000-meter chasm on the ocean floor. 1,000 feet. Instead, there was nothing but eerie emptiness. Powerful lights, the scientists' vehicle piercing through the darkness, showed no trace of anything living. A scientist working on the Census of Marine Life Project, Ron O'Dora of Dalhousie University in Canada, said, quote, "You'd expect a site like this to be quickly recolonized, but it just hasn't happened. It's unprecedented." And speaking of unprecedented, that's the right word. I just got a fast blast from another ham operator, John out there, who says, "Art, I disagree with the time propagation on 80 meters band is just fantastically long. Conditions to Europe, especially Scandinavia, have been fantastic." Well, yes, John, I understand that. But that's not been the nature of 75 and 80 meters since I've been licensed in 58 up and down through a few sun cycles. It is unprecedented that on a regular basis, as soon as the sun goes down, the propagation for the short range completely disappears. And that's part of a pattern, John, of change that's occurring, whether it's to do with the Earth's magnetic field or some other ecological change. The sun cycle notwithstanding, I have never, ever seen anything like it in my life. And while it's great for talking to Europe, it's not so good for talking to your butt. And beyond that relatively minor difference and change, I mean, it's not a big deal that we can't talk to our friends, but it is a big deal that it's changing like this, because I believe it has never done this before. And it's part of the larger change. It's just one small aspect that I'm able to observe as a radio person that I think points to what's going on, the bigger picture, that is to say, with our environmental changes. They're predicting another bad hurricane season, maybe even tragic hurricane season ahead. That shouldn't be a surprise for anybody. Storms are going to become more and more violent as time goes on. To the phones. Wildcard line, you're on the air. Hi.
Hey, Art, how you doing?
Quite well, sir. Thank you.
I just want to jump right to the case. I'm calling from, the area of WABC in New Jersey.
77. Yes, of course.
Yeah, no doubt. I gotta tell you, Art, this is on the level. In June or July, 03,
Yes?
I was taking out the trash one night on a Sunday night. They pick up on Monday morning. I spotted a UFO above my neighbor's house, and that's how it appeared to me. I was setting the trash out with two other people. When I pointed the object out to them above the neighbor's roof, they both ran into the house and locked the door behind them. I was left out on the curb alone. And I gotta tell you, when I was looking at this thing, I was tracing it with my index finger, pointing at it. It was moving so slow and changing color. Gradually, I thought my eyes were playing games with me. And
All right, are you able to give us a sense of the size of it compared to the house, for example?
Exactly. Well, here's the weird thing about it. As it was above my neighbor's house and just floating around, no noise at all, it appeared to be right above their chimney, yet at the same time, it seemed to be way off on the horizon towards New York City. I mean, it was the visual was it's here, but it's there. But at the same time, the weirdest feeling was all time kind of stood still as I was looking at it.
Yes.
And it drifted across the street into the wood line, and I was staring at it as it was just so slightly, gradually changing color. And then, in like a blink of an eye, don't know what direction, it took off. It was gone with no trail of light behind it. Just zapped it out.
Well, we're sure they're here. Somebody's here.
Yeah, it was.
They're watching us. They're doing something. I wish I understood their motives. I wish I understood what they want from us, why they're watching us, what will come of it.
All right, it was just.
But all I can say is welcome to the club. I mean, millions and millions of us have seen these things. We know they're real. We just don't know what they're all about.
The strange thing about it was there was no sound except the sound of nighttime,
No,
11 o'clock at night.
That's not strange. Thank you very much. What it is they've got a manner of propulsion that simply doesn't make noise. Everything we do here on Earth right now, propulsion-wise, makes noise. Takes engines, fuel, rockets, rotors, jet blast, propellers. All the things man does on Earth to move through the air and make noise. If it's silent, there's a good bet it's not from here. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hi.
They are capable of retaining zero mass. Their light would be an accelerator, and they would be able to hover with flights or accelerate to extreme speeds with flights and the zero mass.
Well, that might be true in space. I'm not sure about moving the gravity of Earth.
Well, and in the neighborhood where they have zero mass on a craft, it could affect the neighborhood, including the time that the man talked about distortion.
Yeah, that's true. If it had zero mass, true enough.
But what I wish to talk about is all the large bodies in our solar system are not only departing from the solar system, but increasing in speed.
Yes.
And one of our space platforms is going out of our solar system and increasing in speed.
That's true.
I wonder if someone like Stephen Hawking...
Not only is that true, sir, but scientists are unable to explain why.
Well, and my question, is it feasible that as these particles go through the imperfect vacuum of space, that would drag on them, but what if as it proceeds around the back of the planet or the space platform that there's enough turbulence to annihilate antimatter or some phenomenon of dark matter? We need some lessons on dark matter.
Yeah, I would probably I'd opt for dark matter. I think scientists now believe, theoretical physicists believe, that dark matter is what is propelling objects away from each other. There's nothing else obvious. Otherwise, the physics laws say that no matter how small it might be, the drag or friction of anything in its path would tend to slowly slow an object like that down, not cause it to go faster. So you're right.
And the next time we have a vehicle that we want to send out of the solar system, we ought to send it 180 degrees in the opposite direction and see if it does the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. And my guess would be that it would. Thank you very much. There is something out there that is pushing on these objects. pushing hard enough to get them going faster, not slower, but faster, away from us. As all objects are slowly moving away from us, modern theoretical physicists believe firmly that ultimately our fate is to be alone. That other star systems, other planetary bodies, are all moving away from us, so that the end, if Earth should, and man should be so lucky to live that long, the end would be a lonely, dark, cold existence. Man would go out of his house, if it could happen, should he live that long, and there would be nothing in the night sky, save perhaps our own moon, and by then it may have moved far enough away too. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Good morning.
Oh, how you doing?
Very well, sir.
Well, I wasn't talking exactly, or earlier I wasn't talking about this, but I found out something about, you guys were talking about the Vero chip earlier.
We were?
Well, not earlier today, but this was a couple days ago. That somebody was talking about the Vero chip.
Okay.
And I found out that there was an emperor of Rome named Nero. And it's just kind of, and a lot of people think that was like the beast back then when they were talking about Revelations. And it's just funny how it sounds exactly like the same thing, with Nero meaning Nero. For buying and selling stuff.
And so you're referring, of course, to the mark of the beast.
Right.
Ah.
And it's just funny how the Vero chip name is sounds a lot like the emperor that they were thinking about was the beast. Back then, like 100 years ago.
Well, let's try this out on you, sir. They say that eventually we shall all have to take the mark and perhaps have a chip implanted in ourselves to buy and sell things.
Right.
And without the chip, you cannot buy and sell. You cannot buy food. You cannot exist. You can't buy gasoline. Can't go down to 7-Eleven. Can't do anything. So, wait a minute. If it comes to that, and it comes your turn to take the chip, the mark, are you going to do it?
No.
You're not?
No.
You would starve to death first.
Yeah. It's funny how Nero translates 616 and also 666, and this was like an emperor that.
I know.
Like
but there was a Ronald Wilson Reagan, sir. I mean, that was so. I appreciate it. There's a lot of sixes out there if you look for them. But again, that's a classic test of a true believer. Would you take the chip? Would you take the mark? Not me. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Yeah, no chips here either.
No chips there either. You would starve to death.
Pretty much. Good evening.
Good evening.
I just wanted to bring up one thing about the pole shift that's been going on here.
Yes.
Edgar Casey brought that up a long time ago, and he also said that there would be, along with the pole shift, that there would be a change in consciousness, kind of at the same time.
I can believe that.
Well, you know how birds, they seem to be losing their migratory path.
Yes.
I mean, what do you think it's doing to human consciousness? We kind of depend on, kind of the magnetism ourselves, don't we?
You bet we do, sir. There's magnetite in the human brain, as there is in other mammals. Right. And that's how birds navigate. And so human beings could also be suddenly confused. We could become something else altogether. There could be that's why I said, there could be a shift in consciousness. It could be true.
Well, yeah, Casey brought that up. No telling.
No telling. But one thing, I kind of summed it up at the beginning of the program. There's so much going on right now that points to a profound shift of some kind going on right before our very eyes if we just take the time to look at it. People don't look at what the South and the North Pole looked like 40 years ago and now. They don't take the time to recognize the weather that's changing. They're like the little boiling frogs, getting hotter and hotter. And rarely do we take a moment out to look at what's going on around us, but that the change is happening now.
I agree.
Right now. I appreciate your call, sir.
Yeah, take care.
Take care. That's happening right now. helpless hand. But this change is occurring around us now. Wildcard line, you're on the air. Hi.
Hello, how are you?
I'm quite well, sir.
I wanted to bring up an interesting point that you were talking about how the northern pole was going to be shifted in 50 years to Siberia.
Well, if it continues its present pace, it will in fact be in Siberia within 50 years, yes.
Okay, sir, how about the if it's going to be there in 50 years, that means that it's moving at a quite quickly pace. So wouldn't you think that the Mayans had some intelligence of that and produced that into their calendars? Because all the catastrophic events that are going on in the weather nowadays.
Of course, it's entirely possible that the Mayans understood the cycles better than we do today. I believe that I see a cycle, or a change of a cycle right now, going on right now. But the Mayans may have known and may have seen and may have had access to history that goes far back beyond what we really understand, other than soil samples and ice cores and that sort of thing, and understood cycles that we don't yet understand. And that's why a lot of people do pay attention to the Mayan calendar and believe it does portend. So,
I think it does kind of talk about, I listen to your show quite frequently, some graveyard shifts, and it's just kind of weird that all the correlating facts with all the different subjects kind of come together into one point.
you can feel it yourself, huh?
I sure can.
I appreciate your call, sir. Thank you.
Very much.
Take care. East of the Rockies, you're on the air.
Hi there. How are you?
Quite well, sir. Where are you?
I'm in Richmond Hill, which is just north of Toronto, in Canada.
Way up in Canada. Okay.
Yeah.
Fire away. We don't have a lot of time, but go ahead.
Okay. What I wanted to let you know about, we've got a radio station up here that doesn't operate anymore. It's called CFGM AM.
Okay.
And there's a gentleman that used to be on. His name is Ron Knight. It was the Ron Knight radio show. It was a late night talk show.
Yes.
And they were talking about UFOs one night. I believe it goes back to 1975. So possibly one of the producers can get the audio tape. The gentleman called in saying that he was looking at 3 UFOs over the lake in the back of his house.
Yes.
As he's describing these UFOs, they started to change. They were changing formation. Anyway, all the power went out in the radio station, and all the phone lines went down. Only in the radio station. The radio station was a small building above a pharmacy. The pharmacy still had power. The alarm never went off in the pharmacy because it was hooked into the phone line. It's quite a fascinating story. I can't remember all the details, but I did want to bring this to your attention.
Well, that's quite all right. I appreciate the story. As you know, we have a collection of many extremely credible stories. As a child, she would dissect snakes, collect buckets full of lizards to study. It's no wonder then that her college studies focused on biology and physical anthropology, which in turn led to her study of medicine. A Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Stanford University, she earned her BA in anthropology, then went on to receive her MD from the University of California, San Francisco. She completed her internal medicine residency in Honolulu, Hawaii, rough duty there, where she worked as a physician. Tess is the author of 8, count them now, 8 bestsellers, and in her free time, what free time? She continues to compile a weird biological facts file viewable on her webpage. We have a link up to that right now, www.tessgerritsen.com, and appropriately, the background to all her material appears to be black. Coincidentally, my favorite color. In a moment, Dr. Tess Gerritsen. Even the Alfred Hitchcock of the medical world, I don't know. Dr. Tess Gerritsen, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me, Art. And I have to say that is the best comment I've ever heard. That I was a female on sale. Is there a higher compliment?
There are. Tess, you know, you are a doctor, and doctors heal. Doctors promise to to make things better and at the very least not worse. And yet somehow your studies sort of turn to the dark side. I mean, a fascination with death, not life. Explain that.
You know, it's more a fascination with things that creep me out. And we all are. That's why you have so many listeners on your station. We all are fascinated by things that just freak us out. I can trace it back to my childhood. My mother was an immigrant from China. And when we were growing up, really, her English was not so good. So she took us to horror films. That was the one thing she did understand about American culture. She loved American culture.
Well, horror crosses all cultural lines.
Yeah, because you don't need to know a lot of English to know that when Frankenstein's coming after you, it's a bad thing. So I spent most of my childhood, cowering in movie theaters and screaming as a 5-year-old. So I think that from an early age, I was very aware of the dark side and aware that when you opened up a room to a locked door to a room, that there was something bad behind that door.
Truly, you were raised in the Chinese culture, weren't you?
Yes, well, my mother was very traditional, and like a lot of little Chinese girls, we all took piano lessons, we all were very good at school, we all got straight A's in class.
Yes.
So that was quite traditional.
And the expectation was that you become a doctor or a lawyer or some professional of some sort.
And that's exactly what it was. I think that if I had, been allowed to do my own thing, I might have actually gone into journalism because I'm just curious about things, especially strange things.
What is there? You must have some insight then into the Chinese way of looking at things. I mean, the way we look at the paranormal, for example, or what we think of as paranormal, or the strange stuff you talk about, versus the way the Chinese culture does. I've never had anybody explain that to me. Do they believe as we believe, or profoundly differently?
I don't know enough about it because I was raised so thoroughly in Western medicine, in the belief that things can be proven, that there are double-blind studies that can show whether something works or not.
All science.
Yeah, and my understanding of Chinese culture is that it really believes more in sort of spiritual things.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, whether some things are either cold or hot or yin or yang, and it's all, it just thinks that things are out of balance. I think that's really kind of what summarizes as far as I know about Chinese medicine.
Up front, doctor, and there aren't very many doctors. I interviewed countless doctors and scientists, and I asked many of them, do you believe in God? And most don't. Some are very concerned to even begin an answer to that, and you're welcome not to answer it, but being so immersed in science, there aren't too many physicians that express publicly a belief in God, are there?
I think that probably there are fewer physicians who believe in God than the general population. I mean, when you look at poll numbers for Americans in particular, they say about 90 to 95% believe in a supreme being, whether it's God or some other form. But physicians, I suspect, will be like scientists, and that'll be a little bit lower. And to answer your question, because I have answered this question before on your show, and I always get into trouble, but I'll do it again. Which is, I consider myself an agnostic, simply because I feel that I like to see evidence of things, and faith is one of those things that requires no evidence. That's sort of like the definition of faith.
Well, would you describe yourself as perhaps spiritual in some sense?
I think all human beings are spiritual in some sense. It doesn't mean we believe in a supreme being, but to me, spiritual means you have a sense of wonder about being alive.
Well, for example, a patient is being operated on, and they're in anesthesia. Deep in anesthesia, really out as far as the surgeon is concerned. And some surgeons just absolutely believe there's no way in hell that this guy or gal lying on the table with me opening them up is hearing or understanding anything I'm saying. Some of the more spiritual surgeons are careful what they say during the surgery because they know or think or believe or have faith that the patient can in some way understand some at some subconscious level what's being said. I mean, if the guy above says, "Man, this guy, look at that bleeder, he's not going to make it." You think not?
I don't think you have to be spiritual at all to believe that patients can hear through anesthesia. I think it's just a matter of understanding neurological chemistry that there are some patients who do hear things, and perhaps anesthesia wasn't as deep as they thought it was.
Sometimes not at all. In fact, aren't there these horror stories of people waking up in the middle of, I don't know, gut bypasses and stuff like that?
Well, the worst stories I've heard have to do with kind of crooked anesthesiologists who are stealing drugs, stealing pain medication. There was one case of a gas man, as they call him, who would put them under slightly, and then he would paralyze them, which is normal. You get a form of curare to keep your muscles totally relaxed,
right?
So that when the surgeon opens you up and you want your muscles, they don't want them too tight. And these patients would wake up and they'd be paralyzed, and there was no way they could say or do anything to tell anybody they were in pain. So they would lie on that table and endure surgical procedures, cutting everything else you can imagine, and would feel the whole thing. That to me is probably the most nightmarish thing I can imagine.
I would like to say that I cannot imagine it, except I went through. I didn't know that. No. Yeah, I didn't wake up during the surgery, but when I was in the Air Force, I had a little thing in my left shoulder. It wasn't so little, kind of a big bump. It was a possible tumor, and they took me in and said, we'll just open this up and pop it right out. It would go through with xylocaine, and you won't feel anything to be easy. Well, I was 4 hours on the operating table. It went deep into my chest, and they started the xylocaine, and they told me that they couldn't put me under general because they were already deep into my chest, and they were giving me all the xylocaine they could. I bet I had 30-something or another's. And they said they couldn't put me under general, much as I would like to. And believe me, doctor, I felt every snip, clip, and cut.
Oh, that is a nightmare.
It was, yes, it was. But I was awake during the whole thing, so I can. But I can't imagine what it would be like to be anticipating your next conscious moment. Looking at flowers in the room or something. But instead, you see the bright light, you see the hands moving, and you feel the sharp cutting.
Yes, and you're awake the whole time. Oh, and yet, it's such a terrible crime to imagine that a doctor would put a patient through that. It doesn't, if you are a good anesthesiologist, it should not happen, even inadvertently, because you're supposed to be monitoring blood pressure and pulse rate, and those things go up in pain. And when you see that happen on the monitor, you think you dial up that anesthesia a little bit higher.
Well, listen, you're a doctor, maybe you can tell me. The physician, and I ended up, it could be a simple procedure. I had 4 or 5 doctors in there doing this thing to me by the time it was all over. They told me, again, that they could not give me general anesthesia because they'd given me so much xylocaine. Was that BS?
I don't. You know what? I'm not an anesthesiologist. It sounds a little strange to me, though. I would think that when you start getting in deep in there, you're causing so much stress to a patient, you really want to put them out.
I agree with you. Anyway, that's what they told me. I thought at the time, it sounds, that'd be true. The doctor, you believe doctors, and...
Well, the other question you have to ask is, was there an anesthesiologist in the room, or did they not want to call one in?
Yeah, see, I don't know. They just gave me that BS story, and I have no idea some captain. And then to top the whole damn thing off, I worked in the hospital, and so when the report came back from Lackland Air Force Base, the test on this stuff they developed, it came back and it was completely benign, but the doctor took me in there and told me I had 6 months. And then he cracked up and actually fell on the floor. We were pretty close. We all knew each other in the hospital, but I didn't think it was funny at all.
That isn't funny at all.
It wasn't, no.
I hope you never had to go back for anything else.
No, that was it. That was enough. Anyway, these things do happen. People do wake up, and the trouble is you'd be paralyzed, right?
You'd be paralyzed, and then there is even a case of an anesthesiologist who tried to hide it by giving his patient a beta blocker, which suppresses the ability of your heart to speed up, so that nobody else in the room knew that the patient was awake, because they could not see the monitor and did not realize that the pulse should have been higher. But the patient patient's, normal reaction to pain was muted because the anesthesiologist did that too.
This is going to be like a special place in hell for people like that. I mean, if you believe in such things.
Yeah, and I think he was just a drug addict.
There's really no end of material for you for writing books, is there, in this field?
No, there isn't. Right now I'm doing crime thrillers, but a lot of the fiction that I write about, I base it on true crime, things that have actually happened.
I did notice you kind of did start down that line of crime, more crime than medicine.
Well, I think it's because we're all fascinated by evil. And is there any better way to explore evil than with crime fiction? What people do to each other, and that's the stuff that really freaks me out. And unfortunately, because of the subject matter, I am meeting a lot of very strange
I bet you are.
I'm getting a lot of strange correspondence, and when I go out on book tour, I actually encourage people to tell me their own personal crime stories because I'm always fascinated by it, and I'm getting some real doozies that make me come home with nightmares.
You want more of my material? I've got the audience for it.
Well, you know what? I would love to put out just tell your audience if they have any personal weird crime stories. So let me know because I collect these things. And by the way, while I'm on the radio with you, I just want to say hi to the Coast Riders. And say hello, especially particularly to Tim, who has been corresponding with me. You have a lot of fans out there.
We do indeed. With police, there is the Great Blue Wall. If something internally goes wrong, there's the Great Blue Wall. With physicians, there's a similar wall. It's probably white, I suppose, huh?
You mean to be protecting ourselves?
Yes, in other words, I just have always wondered how many people died, due to the stupid mistake of some doctor or some surgeon, and it gets covered up, you bet.
Well, I think it's probably... I hesitate to give you details because this is somebody I know. He's an anesthesiologist who works in Texas.
Yes.
And he works at a hospital, and there are two surgeons that he works with in this hospital. One of them, he says, is fine. The other one, he says, the saying in this hospital is, if you send a patient to them, tell them to buy the coffin. And they all know this person is incompetent.
Yes.
But I think that they are all concerned about getting sued for they're hurting his reputation. They were just saying that.
And probably blackball themselves.
And this man who told me the story, he just does the anesthesia. He does not want to get in trouble with the hospital.
Well, Tess, when you go into the military, you go through basic training, which basically strips away your personality and makes you subservient and makes you obey orders. And I think that as a doctor, when you go through medical school and then you're an intern, it's kind of the same psychological thing, isn't it?
It is. And there's another thing going on, too. I think a lot of doctors feel that there, but for the grace of God go I. Everybody makes mistakes, and they all realize that. And maybe if they see a colleague make a mistake once, they're not going to say anything. But you know what? I think that most doctors, I think that was the exception that I was talking about, that hospital in Texas. Most doctors, if they see somebody who is incompetent, who is doing bad things, who's losing patients, they're going to say something quietly to the hospital. And the hospital's going to, quietly withdraw their privileges.
Yeah. But that could take some time and some number of mistakes, right?
It could. But that's really where medical licensing boards come into play.
Yeah, but there's politics, right?
There is, but you know what? Here in the state of Maine, my husband actually is the president now of the Maine Medical Association. And he is constantly doing reviews, quality assurance reviews. Whenever there is a complaint, they have a panel that includes not only doctors but also lay people, attorneys, and they decide whether the doctor did something wrong. And they're not at all shy about removing somebody's license.
How does one, in so many cases, discern between a bad decision and incompetence? In other words, a lot of times, given a set of, patient presents with this and that, they simply make a wrong diagnosis and give the patient the wrong thing, and the patient dies.
Well, that happens, and I think that what doctors do when they're on these evaluation boards is they look at what the original doctor was presented with, what was the evidence, and they think to themselves, could I have made this mistake? Or knowing what I know, would it have been clear what should have been done? And, it's really a matter of judgment of the particular panel that has been chosen to evaluate that case. It's the same thing with airplane mechanics or lawyers or anything else. You see something you think that's really stupid, then it's clearly a case of incompetence.
Well, lawyers can certainly tell you that there's some kind of white wall out there.
I think that there is to some extent because doctors work with each other, they're friends. They are all colleagues, and sometimes they just don't want to turn someone in.
Yeah, well, as I say, the difference between an honest mistake and just a misdiagnosis and issuing the wrong medicine and actual incompetence, that would be one hard line to try and discern.
It might be, but I think that if it happens more than once, then every doctor is on alert, and they know. I had surgery recently, and before I chose my surgeon, what we would do is we would go around to our doctors we knew and said, if your wife needed this operation, which doctor would you send her to?
Oh, did you know?
We did, and because the same name kept coming back again and again, that was the one I chose.
Is death not really death?
This question actually came up in a news article that inspired my book, Vanish. Here's the real story. It was in the suburbs of Boston, and a young woman was found dead in her bathtub. And the state police were called, the fire and rescue team came, they found empty pill bottles on the floor and said she had an accidental overdose. They zipped her into a body bag and sent her off to the morgue. And a couple hours later, she woke up and walked out, apparently completely healthy, and with 6 months follow-up later, it was fine.
Oh, God. We get these stories every now and then. We really do. They're in the Associated Press, people waking up in morgues. Oh, God.
And, it happens so often that I have a friend it happened to.
Oh?
He was lying on the gurney. They had just declared him dead of an arrhythmia. He was being wheeled down to the hospital morgue when the orderly bumped up against a doorway, and my friend woke up. And the orderly turned right around and brought him back up to ICU. It's such a common story that I actually did a search on LexisNexis looking for some examples of how often this happens.
I wonder if it ever happens to a coroner, scalpel in hand, ready to begin the autopsy, and the eyes blink, and oh my God, that could kill a coroner.
It did. And it did once. In the 1980s in New York, there was a man who was about to be autopsied. And the doctor had the scalpel in hand and was about to make the cut, and the so-called dead man woke up and grabbed the doctor, and it was the pathologist who keeled over dead of a heart attack. I understand the man who was supposed to be autopsied survived that. So it does happen, especially, I think it probably happened quite a bit that people were buried alive in the days prior to the war.
Yeah, we've talked about that, of course, on past shows, but how can we get it so wrong? There's a criterion, right, for declaring somebody dead. They check this and that, hopefully. Pulses and respiration and, everything. So how do we get it wrong?
Well, in the case of the girl in the bathtub, she had taken an overdose of medications that probably depressed her respiration so that you could not treat her very well. And whoever was listening to her heart, who knows what happened. I don't know how they could have missed it. But it does happen. And I can tell you as a doctor that it's not that out of the question, that if you are in a very noisy room, if you have a lot of relatives who are crying around you, that maybe you don't hear the heart as well as you should. Or you don't watch it long enough to see whether there are any respirations.
Speaking of that, when somebody codes, that is to say, I guess, when they code, their heart stops, they stop breathing, they are more or less dead, right?
Yes, and if you were to check somebody's vital signs at that moment, they would appear dead. dead, even though their brain cells may still be alive.
Oh, okay. So many times the paddles are applied and they're brought back, right?
Yeah.
Are all patients who go through that, who code, are they told about it always?
Afterwards?
Yes.
Oh, they don't know about it. We always tell them, we had a hard time with you yesterday, your heart stopped. I mean, I think that they all know about it.
Okay, I always wondered.
And the other case in which you may not know it is drowning in cold water. I don't know if you're aware of this.
I am. The lowering of the body temperature, I guess?
It's a diving reflex. It turns out that this is such a primitive part of our brains, and it probably goes back evolutionarily to when we emerged from the oceans, possibly. But especially with children, if you are to submerge them in cold water and bring them back out, they will look dead. They will not be breathing. They will not have a heartbeat, but their brains have somehow managed to preserve themselves. And so that is one criteria for continuing a code on a young child. Even though you don't have immediate response for quite some time, they will put them on a respirator and keep them alive.
Doctor, people who come back from things like that and other things similar, do they frequently have personality changes? I mean, I'm told, for example, that people who go through heart bypass surgery frequently come out with personality changes.
I think that's probably, with heart bypass in particular, it's a function of anesthesia. We don't realize how bad anesthesia, how many side effects there are to it. Okay, I'll give you an example of myself. I mean, I'm a pretty healthy person, and I went under general anesthesia to get the neck surgery done. Woke up, and I swear, I had memory problems for a whole month. I was not the same person. It really did take me 4 weeks to bounce back, to be able to think again, just to be able to reason my way through the story. And I hear this again and again from people that anesthesia really does take a lot of brain function away. Part of it is that it lingers in the body for quite some time.
Okay, you're thinking of it then as anesthesia as primary cause. I thought also perhaps the brain being deprived of oxygen for some period of time, some parts. We don't know how the brain operates, right?
No, I mean, there's a lot of mystery involved. Now, with bypass surgery, there should not be that much of they should be maintaining your blood pressure and keeping your oxygenation up. I think that a large part of it is
Wow,
bypass, being on a bypass machine is also bad for your brain as well.
I see. So many times what we think is death is just simply not necessarily death.
Well, the traditional thing is your heart stops and you're not breathing, but real death is brain death. That's where our personality lies, it's in our brain.
Well, that begs the question then, and I will ask it, and that is, when we die, are you confident and comfortable that that's it, that there is no thinking process that's continuing after a parent declared biological death? I don't want to know when I'm being carried away in the bag, when I'm going into the ice chest. I don't want to know about that stuff. And I'm depending on the fact that we're gone, we're out, we're not, somehow the brain is not limping along at some percentage of saved up oxygen and still going.
Well, you bring that up, and this is one of a different nightmare that was actually awakened by my mother years ago. There are people who believe that after you die, you should wait 3 days for cremation.
Yes.
And I think that, of course, is one of the scariest ideas, is that maybe there's still something left in the brain when they put you in the cremation. But I personally don't think that once you have gone without oxygen for that long, that there's much left. I don't think you're going to think
Well, okay, but what about right after you've expired? I mean, let's say you have a heart attack and your heart stops, or whatever other manner of death, but your head is okay and your brain is still there. My question is, how quickly would all functions that are associated with any kind of consciousness, how quickly would they cease? Immediately? 2 minutes? 30 seconds?
I would guess no longer than 2 minutes. Probably more like 15 seconds. Because just think about this. if somebody was to choke you, how quickly do you lose consciousness? That happens within 20 seconds.
Yes.
So maybe there's some brain function that you would not be conscious.
Well, perhaps in that manner of death. But they're not all the same. I mean, there are many ways to die, yes?
There are. I mean, I know what you're saying. You are afraid of everything that we're all terrified of.
Of course.
And, I mean, the cases of people who have near-death experiences are coded and that still feel they can hear things and see white light and see hallucinations that are not unusual for near-death experiences. That's still brain function. I mean, it just means that the neurons are firing and maybe you're awakening memories in the brain, but it just means that you are still conscious on some level, even though you're undergoing CPR.
And you attribute that. I've got a very good friend, Daniel Brinkley, struck by lightning, declared dead, by the way, had an incredible NDE, a couple of them actually, and where does that stuff come from? Is that NDE, according to what you believe, scientifically occurring either just as they're going down or just as they're coming back up, but not in that bottomless pit we call death?
There is a theory that it's all related to lack of oxygen, that it's the hypoxic brain that comes up with what seems to be very consistent sorts of things, seeing light, seeing a bright light, seeing people who you love who have died and passed on.
Don't those stories cause you to doubt a little? How could they not? They're so common. I also interview all these folks who study this at the top of their game, and they swear, how could any rational person listen to story after story after story and not at least have some doubt about what may be over there on the other side or not?
Again, that's why I consider myself an agnostic. I do not say that it's not possible, that it's impossible. I think that it's near-death experience research is fascinating, but nobody has. It's one of those things you can't have any way of proving it, do you? Until you cross over.
No, you don't. But a person of science does have to take into account all of these unaccountably similar stories and make something out of it.
Well, one of the possibilities is, as I mentioned, it's a common hallucination for the hypoxic brain.
Maybe.
I know. Art, I grew up in a paranormal hospital. I don't know if I ever told you this.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did. My mother lived in a demon-haunted world, let's put it that way. We were members of the San Diego Parapsychology Association.
No kidding.
I grew up with mediums, psychic mediums, sitting around our dinner table, and we had people would go into trances over dessert in our house. I was surrounded by my mother would always tell me stories about ghosts she had seen in China, and she firmly believes in ghosts because she has seen them herself. And she
so have many of my listeners. I mean, it's another area of interest. Obviously there cannot be ghosts if there are not spirits who live beyond death. So I have a great interest in these ghost stories, and there are millions and millions of them. Again,
there are, and I would love to see a ghost. I have been looking for a ghost all my life, and as a child, I always wanted to see one. Sorry, I never did, because I think that were I to see a ghost, were I to be convinced that, it would be a great deal of comfort to me that there is evidence of life after death.
All right. We have been fascinated with the possibility of death not being the final toll for a long time. Actually, in reviving the dead, that was Frankenstein, do you believe, Doctor, that it will ever be possible to revive the dead?
Well, that's where cryogenics comes in, isn't it? That's the only real way. We do not have the technological capacity to truly revive the dead right now.
Again, I've interviewed people who are paying substantial amounts of money to have either their head or whole body frozen upon their death to be brought back millennia in the future when whatever it is that killed them can be corrected. Are they crazy?
I wouldn't say they're crazy. I would say that they have a great deal of faith in technology, but knowing the practical aspects of keeping the body frozen for that long, in terms of how many companies go out of business, I think they're probably wasting their money. I mean, just think about how here you have a giant freezer with 500 heads waiting to be awakened in some later century.
Yes.
And you go out of business. You go bankrupt.
What happens to
you're not going to keep those things frozen into eternity. You're just going to let them defrost.
Well, that's certainly a breach of contract.
It is a breach of contract, but once you're dead and gone in 50 years, are you going to be able to say that your heirs will keep up the cryogenic lab?
Well, I mean, people have this elaborate plan for invested funds, you know, that will keep it all going.
Well, you certainly hope that they would.
So let's go back to it. I mean, is there at least a slim possibility that science may find a way to reanimate the dead if they were properly preserved?
Yes, I think that there probably is, assuming you did not let the brain cells die. It has to be, and this is part of, I think, their protocol, is that they undergo cryogenics while they are still on life support, before the brain actually goes. Once your brain is dead, there's no way to repair it.
The courts will not do it. There have been several who have tried. They say, you know, I know I'm terminally ill. I know I've got weeks or months or whatever. I want to go now. It's my only chance, and the courts have not let them.
Well, no, because it leads to what appears to be premature death, right? And it's almost like committing suicide in the eyes of a lot of courts.
I suppose.
Yeah.
But you're telling me that to be, at least have a good hope of being revived, you would have to be put down. There's that term, put down.
While your brain is still functioning. That's a choice. I mean, are you willing to give up, say, 6 months of extra life for the possibility of waking up a century from now?
Would you be?
You know what? I would be waking up in a world where my loved ones were not living. If I had not cryogenically frozen them. To me, that's not worth living, actually. To think of having lost everybody you've loved. I mean, really, when you think about what is the purpose of life.
Oh, maybe if you had enough, you were holding enough early Google stock, you know?
Oh, then you would be keep them going. If I could wake up 100 years from now and everybody I loved would still be here, that would be good. But I think that to wake up in the future when your children are gone or your spouse is gone, everybody you care about is gone, I'm not sure that's worth coming back to.
Well, I imagine that a lot of attempts to revive the dead, through centuries and centuries, Doctor, have been made. I just bet they've been done, and of course they're not publicized, right?
I don't know that. You know what? I think they would be publicized because there's a lot of money to be made.
Well, only if it's successful. I said attempts. I didn't say anybody had done it.
Oh, okay, all right, attempts. That's it. Yeah, if they're successful, believe me, there would be a lot of publicity and a lot of people willing to pay millions of dollars.
Yes. But my question is this: Are there and have there been through the centuries, do you believe, quiet attempts to revive the, let's call them the long dead?
No, I think once, unless you're going to count Jesus and Lazarus, but I just don't think that anybody really has felt that it was possible. And now, recently dead, they have done. I mean, this is like really the whole basis for resuscitation, where we come up with the science of resuscitation. Way back in the 1500s, really, midwives were already using mouth-to-mouth on newborns. Not resuscitation was that quite a ways, probably, even before the 1500s. And I think what everybody got interested in was in the 1700s when galvanism came into play. This is something started off by Luigi Galvani, who found out that you could apply electrical currents to a frog's leg and make it twitch and look like it was alive. And so people thought, oh, well, if you can make a frog's leg come back with electricity, maybe the whole body come back. They didn't understand brain death.
The inspiration for Frankenstein, no doubt.
The inspiration for Frankenstein. I mean, Frankenstein was published in 1813.
But not such an outrageous theory, Doctor, because, frankly, if your heart stops, what do? They put those paddles on and apply what? They apply a lot of voltage and a lot of current.
They sure do, and that's what got everybody very excited because, and you know, Benjamin Franklin actually was one of the early proponents of using electricity to wake people up again. He was a brilliant man. He said, well, why not? So, you know, the interest in electrical restimulation of the heart has been around for quite a while.
It's like cheating death. That's what we're talking about. And when death really isn't death. And Doctor, welcome back. As a doctor, you explained already earlier that younger, you actually participated with your mom in some trances, yes, and so as a doctor then, with that background, you must have had an eye out for the paranormal. Did you ever have an experience yourself that you would put in that category, or that you can't explain rationally?
Oh, you know, in medicine, you see things, and you're always dealing with people who are dying, have died, or about to die. And I worked in a hospital in Hawaii. You know, Hawaii's kind of a very spiritual place. People seem in tune with the afterlife and ghosts and things because there are just a lot of people there who believe in this stuff. I worked in a hospital that had, it was a Catholic hospital, and one of the nurses there was also a nun. And it was very creepy. Every so often she would walk into somebody's room and bless them and walk out. And I asked somebody, well, how come she did it with that patient? They said, when she gives that blessing, she knows they're going to die. This woman, this nurse knew. And I'm not talking she was an angel of death. It's just that she has this ability to know somebody is going to come in and is not going to make it. And she would make sure they got their blessing ahead of time. Now, part of it is that, you see somebody and you think, they're pretty sick, of course they're going to die. But she did it a couple times to people who were perfectly healthy. She just had this sense. I asked her once, and she said, I can smell it. I can smell when somebody's going to die. And she couldn't, it just says they smell like death. There was a room on one particular ward in that same hospital. They tried never to put patients in that room. That room pretty much stayed empty until they got loaded to the gills. They had to put people in there. And the reason was the room was haunted, according to the nurses. Again and again, they would have patients who were in that room who would wake up, would call, ring the call button and say, who is that person standing over my bed? And the person that they would see would be a man in a hospital gown. That was the ghost. I never saw the ghost. I kept going in there looking for the ghost. But
still, when you have experiences like that, the one you just described with the nurse, how can you not be spiritual to some degree? In other words, have enough doubts that you're not just an agnostic, but kind of a spiritual person. It almost sounds as though you are in some ways. I mean, you tell these stories, and it has to have affected you.
I'm curious. I'm agnostic about ghost stories as well. I'm waiting to see one myself. I'm open-minded enough to know that there are things out there we cannot explain. And that's the idea of the haunted room in which patients again and again seem to have experienced the same thing. Then on the other hand, what if they're getting checked in and the nurse happens to say, "Oh, you're in the haunted room"? That's going to affect what they dream about.
Yeah, suggestion. I'm sure. But you wouldn't think that a nurse or anybody else in the hospital would admit to any patient they're going into a haunted room.
You would think not, but you never know. I mean, there may be a volunteer who comes in, and it's just hard to know why this particular thing happens. It may be that a lot of patients wake up with hallucinations of seeing something in the room because they're in an unfamiliar room, and the nurses just happen to remember that it was this particular room that happened more than once, and it became a legend, and it became, embellished over the years.
All right, maybe, but going back again to your first story and that sister. That has to affect you.
Well, again, there could be a logical explanation for that as well. is it that she's just a very, very good clinician, and you know that she has an instinct? There is something that she is picking up on. Maybe she is able to see that they're a little paler than usual, or there is something about them that looks pre-terminal. And the other thing is that people who have cancer do give off a certain odor. This is what I've heard that dogs are actually used sometimes because they're such, they have such acute senses of scent that they can. And I don't know what the scientific investigation on this is, but I have heard stories that sometimes dogs can detect when somebody is suffering from cancer.
Well,
is it possible that this particular nurse had an advanced olfactory system?
Possibly. Certainly, it has been proven that dogs know when their owners are coming home. They did this experiment that ran on one of the primetime news shows where they kept cameras on dogs. Then they'd have the owners start home at an unusual time of day, and inevitably, and every time, the dog would know the owner's on the way and start rushing the door and, getting agitated and waiting for the owner. They knew the owner was on the way. Now,
I don't know how to explain that except ESP.
well, I don't either, but it may mean that animals do have some senses that go beyond ours, it would seem.
Well, dogs in particular are very attuned to human behavior, incredibly attuned to domestic dogs. There's an interesting study about the difference between domesticated dogs and wolves who have never been domesticated. What is the difference between a wolf and a dog in terms of our relationship with them? And
that's the only difference, I think.
Well, okay, but domesticated dogs are used to paying much more attention to people's moods.
Yes.
And the one experiment that I remember was they placed a piece of meat in a way that was very difficult for the dog to get at. And they put a wolf in there, and the wolf just kept trying to get this meat, and couldn't get it. The dog would try a little bit, realize it couldn't get it, and would look at the person. Kept looking at the person like, are you going to help me out here?
Yeah.
So, that was really the difference with wolves are just not used to checking in on people.
Huh.
So I think that there is a very strong bond, and it is bizarre. I mean, I don't own a dog myself due to allergies, but I have seen them do extraordinary things and seem to be extraordinarily sensitive to human needs. And that we all know about seizure dogs, right? You heard about dogs who people who have epilepsy. They have special dogs who are able to sense before the person has a seizure and give the person a warning. And what this does is it allows the patient to get to a safe place, to turn off the engine, to pull off to the side, because they know a seizure's coming.
Okay, I could be wrong about this, but, there was a animal act in Las Vegas that had a tragedy. You know about that?
You mean the tiger?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a story going around that tiger did not maul him just for nothing. That, in fact, he was having a stroke, and that the tiger, in an effort to protect him and get him off stage, grabbed him as it would one of its own around the neck and drag it off.
Well, I believe Siegfried and Roy themselves said that. They did not feel it was a mauling.
That's right.
Yeah, that something, whether it was he was having a stroke or there was a noise in the audience or something that made the tiger concerned about the trainer.
Well, they did say that, and I would think that could be perhaps backed up medically, or maybe not, with all that happened, perhaps not, but...
Well, the one thing is that tiger could have killed him and didn't. I mean, it could have really ripped him apart, and what it did was it grabbed him and pulled him off the stage, as if trying to take it to a safe place.
So it could be a case of that.
It could be a case of that, and I don't believe the tiger has been destroyed. I think the tiger is still in their family.
Oh, okay. Oh, we've got a long list to get through here. You have this thing down. I had no idea there was such a disease as perpetual fever?
Oh, peripheral fever.
Peripheral? Is that what it is? Peripheral?
Peripheral fever. It's childbirth fever. But what is fascinating about the reason I bring this up, I wanted to write a book about this subject for a long time.
Childhood fever.
childbirth fever.
Birth fever.
Childbed fever. It's really what Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, what her own mother died of. And the reason I bring it up is it's such a horror story. It is, you know, we can't imagine what medicine was like in 1800.
All right, I'm not fully understanding what it is, so begin there.
Okay. It is death from a bacterial infection sometime between birth and 10 days postpartum. It's the death of the mother. And it's a fever that's caused by a variety of bacterial species, but they infect the genital tract, usually the uterus, and the infection spreads throughout their body, and they die really of sepsis. Now, today we treat it with antibiotics, but in those days they did not, and what was frightening about it was that it happened in hospitals. If you gave birth to a baby out in the street, you didn't get it. You went to a hospital, you got it. And it got to be so bad that I found statistics for late 1700s.
Yes.
One hospital in France, no woman survived childbirth that whole year. They all died of it. They all went into the hospital and died of it.
Oh my God, I'd stay away from the whole hospital.
But it brings to mind what the medical conditions were in those periods. What was happening was, of course, it was being spread by the doctors. That's what was happening. There were no gloves there. So they would examine a woman who is in labor. They would go on to the next bed, examine the woman in labor without having washed their hands.
I see.
And they were really like death agents. And 10 to 20% of women were dying after coming into hospitals. But it's the conditions of the hospitals that reawaken the sense of, oh my God, we've gone a long way. They would put women in hospital beds with sheets that had not been changed since the previous people had died. So you'd be lying in a bed that's soaked with blood, dry blood, or, you know, all the secretions of childbirth. They would put 4 patients to a bed. They would die so quickly, they didn't have enough coffins. They were throwing several people into coffins at a time. There was a description in Hungary of a hospital where the women's lying-in area was in a ward, and on one end they could look out the window and see the cemetery, and on the other end of the ward they saw the dissecting room where all the autopsies were being done.
Great atmosphere.
Yeah, a great atmosphere, exactly. So, and you know, things were dirty, and women, the reason women actually went into these hospitals is, number one, they maybe did not have enough money. The real reason, though, is that if you went into a hospital and you died there, your baby would be taken care of by the state. If you died at home, your baby was left to the elements. So, and a lot of these women were concerned about what would happen to their children.
Well, under the circumstances, your chances sounded better at home.
Your chances sounded better at home. And you'd think that they would stay at home, but there were just large numbers of people who went into the hospital essentially knowing that they were going to die because they were giving birth to a baby.
Why, even at that time, Doctor, would they not have considered the possibility of cross-contamination? Yes.
You would think so, and this is an example of how medicine sometimes has a total blind eye to the obvious. You would think so. The question was, why were these women dying? They didn't really have a good sense of what infection was caused by.
Right.
One of the ridiculous ideas was that, well, these women were dying because of their modesty had been violated by being examined by male doctors. That they were dying of, just
embarrassment.
God,
no.
The other thing that happened is they were noticing that actually women were dying at a faster rate if they were examined by doctors as opposed to midwives. The wards in which the midwives were taking care of these people were not dying as quickly. There were not as many mortality, not as high mortality rate.
And what would the scientific reason for that be?
Well, this is something else that freaked me out when I read this. Medical students who were attending to these women, where would they hang out? They had no lounge for doctors. They had no place for medical students to sit around and spend the time. So where they would spend the time was the dissecting room. They would hang out there around these infected corpses. They would do their dissections, they would do the autopsies, they'd get totally covered in bacteria, and they would go straight to the ward without washing their hands. So this, the doctors were the ones who were really spreading it because they were hanging out with the corpses, the midwives were not. And they were all spreading infection.
I'll be damned.
Yeah, and to think about just how many bacteria they were carrying on their hands coming from the autopsy. The really sad part was the one man who really made a difference was a doctor named Dr. Ludwig Semmelweis, who was from Hungary. And he noticed that the midwives seemed to have a better rate of survival than the men, than the doctors. And he began to wonder why. And didn't care about the so-called atmospheric conditions or noxious air idea that was killing women. He thought maybe it had something to do with the fact the doctors were spending all this time in the autopsy room. It also impressed him that one of his friends punctured a finger while he was taking care of a woman, and that friend died of sensory sepsis. There's an infection going on. There's some kind of a bug that's being passed around. So all he did was tell everybody, wash your hands. He made everybody in this one hospital wash their hands. And the mortality rate dropped to 1/10 of what it used to be. And that, you'd think that was enough evidence to make doctors change their practice?
One would think.
One would think. It didn't. Doctors were so upset at the idea that they would have unclean hands. So they thought they were gentlemen. Doctors were gentlemen. And they did not want to be labeled as unclean. So they hounded Dr. Semmelweis out of his practice.
That's absolutely amazing.
He ended up in an insane asylum.
Oh my.
He was so devastated by the attacks, by the loss of his reputation, that he ended up in an institution where, ironically enough, I think he cut himself and he died of sepsis, the very disease that he was studying all this.
He did not demand that whoever treated him go first wash up?
Well, I think at that point in a mental institution, what can you demand? They do what they're going to do to you.
I suppose that's true. While we're on the category of things being passed like this, you know, I've been watching the headlines, Doctor, for some time now, about the possibility of a tiny little genetic change in this horrifying bird flu, and the possibility of it being, even some stories beginning to suggest they're seeing human-to-human transfer of this bird flu with the mortality rate through the roof. I mean, some incredible figure like 55%.
Yes, it is. It's somewhere between 30 and 70%.
Of the people who get it die, is what that means, folks. And I'm watching these stories very carefully, and they're kind of eerie, Doctor, because the stories sort of are saying it's not a matter of when or if, but rather when. In other words, it's going to happen.
We are overdue for a pandemic of the flu, and I don't think there's anybody who doubts that there is going to be one. Whether it is this particular one, we don't know.
Why do the scientists seem so damn convinced that this is the one? I mean, there are so many stories about it saying we're just, a hair's breadth away from it, and why are they so convinced in this particular case? Do you have any idea?
Well, it's because it's already killed people. And we already, part of the problem, of course, is that, where its cradle is in Asia, it's because there's so much contact between people and birds.
Yes.
They live with their chickens and their ducks and their geese. And this is sort of like the perfect cue to get this virus to mutate. It doesn't take very much. It just takes one person being infected with the avian flu at the same time they are infected with a more common person-to-person flu.
And they somehow merge?
They exchange genetic material.
Yes.
And what it does is it changes the bird flu into something that's more easily transmissible between people.
Like a sneeze.
Like a sneeze. And that's what us all. And I've been worried about this for quite some time. I can't get it just seems to me that a lot of people are going around with their heads underwater, not caring about what's happening.
Secret. When you do an interview like this, there are a number of, suggested, scripted interview questions that you can ask a guest. But some of the more interesting ones come not from there, but sort of just the thread of the conversation. And in this case, we've really stumbled into one here. When you hear a doctor like Dr. Barrettson respond to a question about this, possible bird flu thing by saying I've got a family plan, you don't have to read between the lines there. Obviously, she takes this very, very seriously, as do I, and so therefore, I'm most interested in what your family plan would be, Doctor.
Withdrawal from society, I'm afraid to say. We have a son in college right now. We had told him that as soon as he gets the word from us, and we're watching. We watch the WHO bulletins. We watch what's happening in Asia. We are waiting to see human-to-human transmittal. And we told him that as soon as he hears from us, he is to leave school immediately. And come home. And we are expecting, our nuclear family at least to be together. We have a certain amount of food put aside. We have wood to burn in case it's cold. And you have to accept the possibility that there will be no public services like water, for instance. I mean, where's your water going to come from? Where's your power going to come from if those things shut down, if people don't show up for work?
We think very much alike.
Yeah, and luckily we do have a cottage that is on a lake, so that we can always get water. We can always keep ourselves warm. The question is, are you going to have enough food to go for the 3 months it'll take to...
All right, that was going to be my next question. You're estimating 3 months. That could be a little optimistic.
It could be a little optimistic. It could go, and as you said, in 1918, the bird flu had several surges. There was one surge where people died, and then it seemed to go away, and then it came back again and killed even more people. So you may think that it's over with, but it actually is sort of like taking a little breath, and it comes right back.
Right.
So I think that it's important for people to have that sense of, well, I have water, I have food, I have heat, I have shelter. Because you're not going to really want to be out in public. You're certainly not going to want your kids to go to school. It's going to take probably 6 months for them to manufacture enough of a vaccine so that in that particular time, a lot of people could die.
And it's going to be too late for millions. And millions and millions. And this could potentially spread so quickly that I'm with you. I figured that the first time I see a legitimate human-to-human transmission, really, I've seen several such stories, and I'm sure you have too, Doctor, which may not be true. And I don't know how you're going to discern when you get the one that is true, because by the time they really cop to it could be way too late.
Well, that's certainly possible. I think that what'll happen is it's going to break out somewhere in Asia.
Yes.
And news may not get to us right away. But before it actually gets on a plane and hops here, it'll probably spread within local villages. And that could give us enough of a chance to know. I mean, I've seen that the computer-generated model of how long it would take to get to the United States, it's going to spread locally first. And so we're probably going to have days, weeks to know ahead of time when to be cautious. Because those local villagers are not going to be getting on planes. It's going to be healthcare workers or tourists who are going to bring it home.
Doctor, is it like Ebola? Is it like what is it like, this bird flu? If it does get loose, and what does it do?
What does it do? It turns, if you're young and healthy,
yes,
it can turn your own immune system against you. And that's the scary part about it. I mean, if you're older, it probably will kill you in the way that flus have killed in the past, which is turn into a bacterial pneumonia.
Right.
Or just kill you from a viral pneumonia. But what was frightening about the flu in 1918, which, by the way, started off as a bird flu then as well, it actually causes us to have what they call a cytokine storm. It makes our immune system turn against our own lungs and destroys lungs. And the descriptions from 1918 of the soldiers who died, the American soldiers who died, was that they would feel a little bit ill, and then a day later, 2 days later, they were coughing up blood and dead. And that was not necessarily the virus itself. It was actually the virus causing the body to come up with a very strong immune response.
So once your immune system is gone, anything gets you virtually.
Well, Well, yeah, but in that particular case, it was actually the immune system causing damage to the lungs.
Well, we know something, I guess, about the way the people are dying, because there have been X number of victims of it already, if by direct. So that's the way they're dying, huh?
And
how quickly?
It does vary. It can happen within days. It may take longer because some of these people are being put on respirators, so they're lingering a while. But we're talking about hospitals being overwhelmed in the U.S. We don't have enough ventilators to keep everybody alive. So death could come very quickly if you don't have ventilatory support. You don't have enough doctors and nurses on the front lines. I think that the medical personnel, they're going to probably have access immediately to things like Tamiflu.
All right. Here's another one for you. This is so frightening. The prospect of this is so frightening that if we became aware that a certain province in China had, or the Chinese government became aware that a certain province in China had indeed, all the worst fears had come true. It had mutated, it was spreading from human to human, and it was 70% fatal. It was killing everything it came in contact with, and fast. And this is all very conceivably possible. Do you think the Chinese government, and whatever government would be in question here, would consider the possibility of sanitizing the entire area where it's occurring with something like a nuclear weapon?
No, never.
Never, huh?
I don't think they would do that.
You don't?
And even then, you have to ask yourself, it might have gotten out already.
Well, it might have. I'm just wondering if it came to that point of decision. And as you point out, the computer models are quite specific about how quickly it would spread.
Yeah.
If they had that one moment in time when they could deal with it, would they?
I don't think there's a country on Earth that would make that political decision. I just can't imagine it. They can try quarantine, but they don't work. People will slip out. And the other thing you remember is that birds migrate. So, it's a possibility that actually birds may bring it around the world.
Is that a possibility? In other words, the human form of it, could they become somehow carriers of what would be this new human form?
Well, I'd be more concerned with people, because people are closer in contact with people. But you have to ask yourself, if they can pass it to us, is it possible that we could pass on a version back to the birds? I think that it's more of a concern air travel. Now, you live in a fairly isolated area, and I live in an area that's not on a common travel route. We're up at sort of the mid-coast Maine.
Yes.
So I think that we would have a little bit more warning than, say, somebody in New York City or Los Angeles or San Francisco.
Perhaps so.
Yeah.
You think, again, that 3 months would be a reasonable effort to make it absolutely closing yourself off from the world, and I mean nobody.
I think that's a minimum. I think that's what you sort of should have enough food for, and that's not hard. Enough rice and beans, you could stock that away and be careful with your food. As long as you have water, I think that's in some areas of the country that's the tougher thing, to have access to water.
And if you have all of those things, Doctor, you also probably should have a gun.
Well, okay, that's a personal choice.
It's a personal choice, but for the kind of woman who writes the kind of books you do, if that didn't occur to you, I would be very shocked indeed.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to talk about guns.
All right, that's fine.
I'm not going to even
That
say
also
whether I have...
answers it just fine, thank you.
Yeah.
Getting back to evil for a moment, Doctor. I interviewed a great man named Father Malachi Martin. He was very close to 2 popes. He was a very fascinating, very deep, very believable man.
He's done exorcisms, hasn't he?
Oh, you betcha.
Yeah.
Yes. And he believed deeply, completely, absolutely in the presence of real evil. And I mean the real McCoy evil. And he suggests that it is far more wise widespread than you can possibly believe, that many people walking down the street that you meet every single day and go by you on the street have made silent deals with the devil. He called it perfect possession. And so, what about that brand of evil, Doctor? Do you go that far with it?
I believe, well, I'm not sure I believe in Satan, but I certainly believe that evil exists. And it's interesting because it's actually the topic of the book that I'm working on now.
Evil as a manner of behavior, Doctor?
No,
or evil,
Satan.
Evil at
Satan.
That one?
Whether or not, who is Satan? What has been our impression of Satan over the centuries? Who is he, and whether or not this is what the explanation is for evil? I don't believe in, as I said, I'm an agnostic on all issues, particularly this.
Including Satan.
Including Satan. But, if you're going to believe in God, you're going to have to believe in... If you're going to believe in the light, you're going to have to believe in the dark, right?
I almost thought for a second there you were declaring a belief in Satan. It almost sounded that way, and I was going to spring it on you.
No, I think I'm looking at it just from a curiosity, from a scholarly point of view, just because, if you're interested in good, you also have to be interested in evil and how it has been viewed through the years. And frankly, the biblical view, or the ecclesiastical view of Satan he's gotten a bad rap in some ways. I think that, you go back to what is the meaning of Lucifer? How do you translate that word? It means the bringer of light, knowledge.
A bad rap.
It's because of the way, who is Lucifer? Who is the snake? What did the snake do that was so wrong?
Yes.
It opened Eve's eyes. So a lot of what our view of Satan has to do with the fact that the church, through the centuries, has not been happy with people asking questions.
Well, you talk with much more animation about Lucifer than you do about God.
It's because Lucifer is a very
dark.
Well, it's not just dark. I think it's a very controversial topic, and it fascinates me. I don't believe he exists, but I like to look into what people have considered to be satanic, or where is the background of Lucifer. But when we're talking about evil, I think of evil as being something completely different. To me, evil is causing human misery. That's what evil is. Whether you want to say it's caused by Satan or whether it's caused by people being bad. As far as your friend, my own feeling is that we carry evil within ourselves. That people are capable of worse things than you could ever imagine. Because I write crime thrillers now, I encounter people sometimes who really kind of freak me out. I was on book tour once, and this was for the book The Surgeon, which is about a serial killer who does what Jack the Ripper once did. He cuts women open and removes their sexual organs and gets a great deal of pleasure out of this particular practice. So I'm sitting there signing books, and a very ordinary, nice-looking man comes up and bends over, and he whispers in my ear, he says, "Thank you for writing this book." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "You allowed me to indulge in my fantasies."
Oh, my God.
And then he took a signed book and he walked out. And I thought, how many people are walking the streets with these fantasies? Now, I'm not saying that he did anything wrong, but my feeling is that there are a lot of people who have.
Yeah, but you had to imagine that as a possibility.
Yes, who think about these things, who enjoy these things, who maybe love to fantasize about these, but never actually act on their impulses. So luckily, most human beings are able to, put a clamp down on the inappropriate things they know they could do. What is scary, though, is when you get into a situation such as after the bird flu, or when civilization breaks down, or when there are no police forces, and then these crazy people, or not necessarily crazy people, but evil people, feel free to do what they want to do.
Yes.
And that's why you talk about guns. I can understand the logic of having one, yes.
Well, if you have all the other things you named, you're going to need a gun.
To keep your family.
As quickly as bird flu would spread, I think that man beginning to cross that line between fantasy and action would be even faster.
Desperation leads people to do pretty horrible things. You're taking care of your family. Well, that man over there is taking care of his family, too. And if it involves getting rid of you, then he'll do it.
Yes. Regarding evil, from a scientific point of view, do you think that it is hereditary? Do you think it is passed from father to son, or skips generations like some other things, that evil is inherited, it's just in the genes?
There are some really kind of disturbing cases of families who do stuff together. I think we talked about this once before. There was a case in Oregon of a young man who called up the police and said, my dad raped my girlfriend, and by the way, I think my dad is capable of some worse things. And they dug up the father's backyard and found some dead girls. Apparently he had been a serial killer. He'd been killing girls in the neighborhood. Yes, and so this came out in the news, and then what followed up was interesting, was that this serial killer's father was in jail at that moment for having killed girls and burying them in exactly the same way. So here you are, this young man, your father is a serial killer, your grandfather is a serial killer. It's got to make you wonder about whether or not there's any genetic stuff going on.
Well, do you wonder hard about that?
Well, there are cases of people who, there is a Dutch family who apparently every male in that family has been in prison, and it appeared to be a genetic defect.
I mean, you mentioned about killing the women in that certain horrible way, and then burying the bodies, and grandfather and father and son. I mean, just that much alone, it would seem the odds against that, they could probably do that, work that up in a computer someplace and find the odds, but they'd be so astronomical that
they would be. That's right. But was it childhood influence or was it genetics? That's hard to tease apart, except for that one Dutch family. Then there's I think we just go back through the centuries, you can find families that they make their living off being predators. There's a whole Scottish family. It's called the Sonny Bean family. I think it was back in the 1500s. They would get people who were traveling. The family would just descend on these people and drag them back to their cave in Scotland. It was like on the seashore, so at high tide you could not see the mouth of the cave. And there were, I believe, like 70 members of this family living there. And they would rob these families and they would take them back and eat them. So they would eat them. And this was just the most feral kind of creatures you could imagine. And what ended up happening was they set upon one couple, and there were other people who were traveling the road and were able to fight them off. And the authorities sent soldiers out. They realized we have a real problem here. There were people disappearing constantly in this part of Scotland. And they located the cave. They went into the cave and they found thousands of human body parts.
Thousands?
Yes. Things had been eaten, bones, leftover remains, and they found these people, and they dragged out the whole family, and they were all executed pretty quickly. I think it was clear to them that they were dealing with a family of monsters. But that was the 1500s. But then you get America. America has them.
All right. So, Dr. Gerritson's books are, they're not just great, they're incredible. They're absolutely, Gravity for me was in the top 5 books, and near the top of that list indeed. Just a fantastic book, and I recommend everybody go get that. That's me. My wife has read your mysteries, some of them twice. So we love your work. Where are you going? Are you going to stick with mystery now? Are you going down that road for a little while? Will you eventually come back? Will you ever do anything on the paranormal?
I am fascinated by the paranormal. You probably know that since I grew up with it. And I'm continuing with my crime thriller series. It stars 2 women whose lives have changed since I wrote the first book about them, The Surgeon. But this recent book that I'm writing, it is a crime thriller. It involves the same 2 characters, a forensic pathologist and a detective. But they are tracking down whether or not, as I said, Satan really exists. And it involves a number of crimes with these occult symbols that are left and words in Latin left. And, that kind of stuff creeps me out. It just really does. Anything to do with history and the occult frightens me.
It works on me too. So that's the road you're going down for a
Yeah,
while.
I'm going to continue. You know, I have to tell you, Art, even though Gravity was probably my favorite book of all, it sold the fewest copies. I learned that lesson in publishing, that if you write a book that is very technical, very scientific, it's kind of difficult for a lot of the general public to understand. And I have a lot of, especially female readers, who told me that there was too much technical stuff in there.
That depresses me.
It doesn't that depress you? Because I am such a fan of the space program, and there are a lot of people in America who don't care.
That depresses me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. Because I want more of that, and you're telling me it doesn't sell, and if it doesn't sell, it's dead.
Yeah, and you know how I got started on the crime stuff is actually I was on book tour for Gravity, and a woman stood up at a book signing. She said, "I really don't care about the space program. I want you to write a book about a subject I am interested in." And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Serial killers and twisted sex." And I thought a long time about that, and I thought, well, maybe I should give that a try. And that's how The Surgeon came about. It was serial killers and twisted sex.
All right. You described this family of cannibals in Scotland, and then you started to say something about America too. Yeah.
America. Well, we're a big country. We have a couple centuries history to have accumulated some pretty weird stories here. There's a family, it was in Kansas, and it was in the 1800s. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Bloody Benders, but it was a family that, again, killed for its livelihood.
No, I have not heard of them.
Oh, well, apparently I've never been to Kansas. I hope to go one of these days, but if you go down one of these highways, there's actually a Kansas historical marker on the highway showing where the Bloody Benders lived. It was on the prairie. They had a sort of a ramshackle inn.
Yes.
And if you were a traveler going down this inn, there was no place else to stay, and they would kind of wave you in and say, "Oh, why don't you spend the night here, because you've got a long distance to travel." So the traveler would come into the house.
You checked in, but you didn't check out.
Exactly. It was a mother, a father, a daughter, a beautiful daughter now, and a son.
Yes.
And they would talk to him, and they would place him with his back to a curtain. And the daughter was the one apparently who did the killing. She would come up behind him and smack him over the head with a hammer, and they would finish him off, and they would just open a trap door and roll him into the cellar where he was left to rot. So there were a number of bodies that were found in the cellar when this was all done. The interesting thing about the whole Bloody Bender family...
They weren't eating them.
No, they were not eating. They were just stealing.
They were just stealing.
They were stealing. They were just robbing these travelers. But what was fascinating, it was a woman who actually got them arrested, who stopped the whole thing. Her husband had disappeared down this road months before, and so she went searching for her husband, and she ended up in the same place, and was led into the house, and she was going to spend the night. They were going to kill her, and then she noticed a piece of jewelry on a table that belonged to her, and realized that her husband had met an end there.
Gotcha.
So she excused herself and climbed out a window and ran across the prairie and got to authorities. And they came the next day, and the Benders had disappeared. The family was gone. They were never seen again. But that was when they found the dead bodies in the cellar. They found more bodies.
And they got away? You're telling me they got away?
Well, that's the story. They got away. There is another story that townspeople took care of them, dispatched them. It didn't tell anybody. It was a vigilante act.
Which are you inclined to believe?
I'm inclined to believe they got away. I mean, it sounds like, they knew what they were doing. But they were never seen again.
So, all of this suggests, Doctor, that this evil is hereditary.
Well, this was a family. You don't know if you were to raise a child. If you were to raise a child saying that this is a normal way to live your life, to kill other people, maybe they would grow up feeling that.
Maybe they would.
Maybe they would. Yeah.
But I still say the odds against, say, 3 generations of one particular horrible kind of serial killer, the odds of that are just not calculable.
Yeah, it's true. I think that what you need to do is look at serial killers who did not raise their own children and see if their kids ended up bad, despite the fact they had no contact with their old dad.
If it proves out that it is genetic,
what would you do?
And there becomes a test for it, which inevitably there would, because once we've already unraveled the genome, and now we're looking at these smaller pieces, parts, right, within the genome, and eventually perhaps we'll discover it is a genetic thing, and then what?
That's a good question. What does society do with it? Do you punish somebody before they've done anything wrong? Do you take away their civil liberties?
Even if you're sure they're going to do,
well, you're not sure.
If we become sure?
You don't know until they actually do it. Once you know, all you would know is that they have the genetic tendency towards violence. Now, that can be controlled by other means. You can make sure that they are they're completely supervised, that they are told what the consequences are. And these people that we're talking about, we're not talking about stupid people. We're not talking about mentally ill people. We're talking about people who have the capacity to control themselves when they need to. And that was what I was talking about, that man who came in and enjoyed my serial killer book. He had the desire. He probably had the fantasy. But he was well-behaved enough to know that if he did something like that, there would be a consequence. And that is where society comes in. That's why we need our police force. That's why we need, to be orderly. We need to have social control on people, because there is a certain sub-segment of human being who enjoys hunting other human beings.
How concerned are you that you will encounter the wrong kind of fan? The really wrong kind of fan?
I think about it. I mean, Anne Rice used to be concerned about it enough so that she had a very, very strange fan base. She had the people who were Satanists.
Oh, yes, I can only imagine.
That group. I think everybody who is a public figure has to be concerned about it. I know Patricia Cornwell travels with bodyguards, and she packs. So it's something, and particularly when you get the kind of stories that I sort of dig up out of forensics. I was told recently that there's a particular prison somewhere where they house people who are getting ready to go out under the witness protection program.
Yes.
They're just sitting there waiting for their identities to be remade, and so they just sort of sit in this area of the prison. And I've been told that I'm their favorite author.
Great.
So I'm just waiting to be contacted by one of them. You write about a subject matter that kind of incites people to think about the dark side. You do worry about it. But this is the research I do. This is the kind of stuff I am fascinated by. I had mentioned earlier, I think in my email, that I had come up with various weird ways to die. Strange ways to die. What are the most bizarre ways that people have died recently in the forensic literature? This is just the kind of stuff that I tend to suck up.
Well, I hate to say this, but I watch, for example, Law & Order on TV, and they've done a number of episodes about exactly the kind of author that you are, meeting her end in the most disagreeable way she ever wrote about. That somehow this interest, this association, even though you don't know it's happening, is made, and they feel they know you, and boy, what a scary life to lead. I mean, you've got to wonder every time you open up some email.
Yes, you do, and Stephen King also has to struggle with the same thing. He has even weirder people because, he deals with sort of supernatural and horror stuff, and that kind of stuff actually seems to attract people who are mentally ill. I think people who read crime thrillers are not necessarily crazy, but they have strange interests. And I do welcome people letting me know about their own personal crime stories that they have to tell me. And I've collected a number when I go on book tour. People who say, let me tell you about the serial killer in my family.
Let's take a few phone calls. A lot of people want to talk to you, and I can see why. You're a fascinating lady. First-time caller line. You're on the air with Tess Gerritsen. Hi.
Hello. Am I on, Art?
Yes, on. You are.
Oh, I've been waiting here patiently. It's an honor to get to talk to you, Art, you and your doctor friend. My name is Chuck, and I'm calling from Primexville, Pennsylvania, near Allentown.
Okay.
And I'm a retired physics teacher and also a radio ham operator. I understand you're a ham operator, too.
Yes.
The thing I wanted to bring up was your doctor friend there wasn't quite sure about a creator. And some time ago, I got thinking about Einstein's law, which says that the small amount of mass times the speed of light squared is a tremendous amount of energy. And of course, 60 years ago, as you know, we took a small amount of energy, or mass rather, converted it to energy and destroyed 2 cities in Japan. So when you realize that light is a big part of this equation, and your radio, which we're not talking on, and your ham radio and my ham radio, is made up of 3 fields, which you probably know. They are the electric field, the magnetic field, and a gravitational field.
Yes, and your point being, because we don't have a lot of time.
Yes, well now when you say every atom, Art, every atom has an electric field, a magnetic field, and a gravity. In other words, light is in mass. Einstein's law says that. It says that light is energy over mass, and which shows that light is in mass.
And how does all of this end up as proof of creation?
Well, I'm getting to that now.
Okay.
Now, there's 6 places in physics that show that this is true. First of all, it says that light is energy over mass.
We don't have time for all 6, sir. You're going to have to crush the point in here.
Okay. Well, anyway, these 6 points prove that light was used to make mass. That's a big factor in mass. But we have to take light and add the strong and the weak nuclear forces to make it atomic mass. In other words, light is not atomic until we add these other 2 forces. So the issue is, could light all by itself pick up these other 2 forces to become the mass of the universe?
All right, well, we'll have to hold it right there. Do you make anything out of that, Doctor?
I don't know how that leads me to a creator.
I didn't get it either.
Yeah, I mean, science is wonderful, and physics is we're always learning something, and that's sort of the basis of science, is that we can test, and we make hypotheses, and we try and find the evidence to back that up.
Do you think it's possible that in our lifetimes, or perhaps future generations' lifetimes, science will, in fact, prove a creator, prove a creation force, beyond any shadow of a doubt? After all, it's got to be possible.
Well, it's possible. I don't foresee it happening in the near future. Certainly not the creator that we imagined, an almighty sentient being. Okay, I don't know how